You may think we know the pyramids of Giza. 3 giant pyramids, 1 massive sphinx, and endless desert around them. And then researchers go and find something totally unexpected. Another sphinx buried under the sand. A team of Italian scientists believe this structure could be hidden beneath the Giza Plateau. And they also think the entire area may have a huge underground complex stretching beneath the pyramids themselves. This discovery started with radar scans and satellite images. Researchers studied the layout of the Giza Plateau very carefully. The Great Pyramid, the Pyramid of Khafre, and the Pyramid of Menkaure, and the famous Sphinx. That's when they noticed something strange. The lines connecting the pyramids and the Sphinx seemed to point toward another raised area nearby. That mound is huge, around 108 feet tall. That's the height of a 10-story building. It seems to be made mostly of hardened sand, and it's important because carving a giant structure into bedrock would be much harder. There's another detail making this theory even more interesting. The famous Dream Stele, a giant stone slab in front of the Great Sphinx, shows not 1 sphinx, but 2. For a long time, people thought that was just symbolic artwork. But what if it shows something real? The idea is that ancient builders created 2 giant guardian statues, but one of them later disappeared under layers of sand. Researchers say that the geometry of the site makes this theory difficult to ignore. The alignment between the pyramids, the visible sphinx, and the hidden mound appears unusually precise. The patterns just line up too well to look random. Even if there's no second sphinx, it could point to hidden chambers, tunnels, or even an underground citadel. Right now, though, this is still a theory. No one has excavated the site yet, and many archaeologists remain skeptical. But the scans, the shapes underground, and the strange alignment patterns make people consider this idea seriously. Besides, the story gets even stranger. Ancient carvings near the Great Sphinx describe a bizarre moment from the life of Prince Thutmose IV. According to the inscriptions, the young prince fell asleep in the shadow of the Sphinx while it was still buried in sand. Then, in a dream, the giant statue supposedly spoke to him and promised him the throne of Egypt. But only if he cleared the sand away and uncovered it. That story was carved into stone thousands of years ago. Could it contain clues we've missed for centuries? To get more data, the team scanned the ground beneath the Great Sphinx, the nearby pyramids, and the area that connects the Sphinx to the Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest pyramid at Giza. And according to the scans, strange structures may exist deep underground. Vertical shafts, long horizontal tunnels, and branching passageways. Researchers think that some of these formations connect into a massive underground network stretching below the pyramids and the Sphinx. The coolest thing is that the underground patterns seem to be symmetrical. The hidden structures beneath the area mirror each other almost perfectly. That symmetry is one of the main reasons the researchers think this isn't some random geology. The theory itself didn't appear out of nowhere either. More than 10 years ago, Egyptologist Bassam el-Shamma also suggested that once a second Sphinx could have existed. He based this idea on ancient Egyptian records and myths describing lightning striking the Sphinx. He thought that those stories could actually refer to a real monument that no longer existed. It could vanish because of time, weather, or even ancient beliefs. Most Egyptologists don't accept this idea, and only a small group of people support it. After all, no excavations have confirmed the existence of a hidden Sphinx or underground city. But the radar scans, the underground patterns, and ancient carvings, and the strange symmetry beneath Giza might mean that we still have no idea what's really buried under the pyramids. At this point, researchers are still waiting for permission from Egyptian authorities to study the mysterious mound more closely. At least, we know much more about the Great Sphinx of Giza, one of the oldest and most mysterious monuments on Earth. The statue is gigantic. From its front paws to its tail, it's about 240 feet long, almost the length of a football field. It rises around 66 feet, about as tall as a 6-story building, and at its widest point, the body reaches over 60 feet across. To construct it, ancient builders didn't move giant blocks into place like they did with the pyramids. They actually cut the Sphinx straight out of the rock beneath the desert's surface. Over the centuries, wind, sand, and humidity slowly damaged the monument. Large parts of the Sphinx had to be repaired again and again. Workers added layers of limestone blocks around the base to stop the structure from crumbling. And then there's the missing nose, probably the most famous mystery. A lot of people believe Napoleon's soldiers blasted it off with cannons during the French campaign in Egypt, but that story isn't true. Drawings from before Napoleon even arrived already show the Sphinx without its nose. Interestingly, researchers who studied the face found marks suggesting someone deliberately broke the nose off with the help of such tools as rods or chisels. But nobody knows exactly who did it or why. Now, most people call the statue the Sphinx, but technically, that's not even correct. The creature from Greek mythology had the body of a lion, the head of a woman, and wings. But the one in Egypt looks different. It has a lion's body, a human head, and no wings at all. So technically, it belongs to a totally different category. Even its name changed over time. Ancient Egyptians didn't originally call it the Great Sphinx. Thousands of years ago, people linked it to powerful deities connected to the sun and the horizon. Later civilizations gave it completely different names, so the monument kept changing identities with time. Nobody truly knows who built it. A lot of experts believe Pharaoh Khafre ordered its construction around 2500 BCE because his pyramid and temples are nearby. Plus, the face of the Sphinx looks similar to the statues of him. But there's a problem. No inscription directly says he built it, so other researchers think someone else created it. Plus, archaeologists have found something else that makes the story even stranger. Near the Sphinx, they've uncovered abandoned tools, stone blocks, and even unfinished meals left behind by workers. It looked like people suddenly stopped working and walked away in a hurry. The workers themselves weren't starving slaves like many people imagine. Excavations showed they ate high-quality meat, beef, sheep, and goat. That kind of food was expensive in ancient Egypt, so the workers were likely skilled laborers with an important status. The Sphinx also looked completely different back then. Today, it has this faded sandy color, but thousands of years ago, it may have been covered in bright paint. Researchers found traces of red on its face and hints of blue and yellow on its headdress. Sadly, even restoration works may cause damage. During repairs in the early 20th century, parts of the Sphinx's headdress broke off. Later restoration attempts used materials that actually harmed the soft limestone underneath. At one point, a huge chunk crashed off the statue's shoulder. The Sphinx also once had a beard. And today, pieces of that beard are kept in museums in London and Cairo. But even here, researchers argue. Some experts believe the beard belonged to the original statue. Others think people added it centuries later during restoration projects. Despite its terrifying appearance, the Egyptian version of the Sphinx was actually seen as a protector. The evil, dangerous version most people know comes mainly from Greek mythology. Ancient Egyptians viewed their Sphinx very differently. To them, it represented power, protection, and divine authority.
One of the most unexplored and mysterious places on Earth is located in plain sight. It's one of the most majestic monuments of humankind. The wonder of the ancient world hides a secret that scientists and archaeologists still can't solve. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza in Egypt. The huge sculpture of a lion with a human head was carved out of rock about 4,500 years ago. Scientists still don't know the exact date of its creation and are also unaware of who built it and what for. There are many assumptions and theories, but none of them has been confirmed. Most people have seen this majestic sculpture either in photographs or in reality, but almost no one knows what's hidden underneath it. The statue of the Sphinx was carved from a single piece of limestone. It was painted. The remains of color pigment on the surface prove this. In the distant past, the Sphinx looked much brighter and more colorful than what we see now. But even after thousands of years, its greatness hasn't diminished. And by the way, Sphinx is not the real name. It was invented by the Greeks about 100 years or more after its creation. Initially, the Egyptians called the statue Hor-em-Akhet. There are many legends and theories saying the Sphinx is there for a reason. It's like a watchdog that guards the tomb of the pharaoh and the secrets of ancient Egypt. These legends become more plausible when archaeologists discovered hidden entrances at the feet of the Sphinx. They believe that these secret passages are the beginning of the tunnels leading to the halls with treasures. You can find a lot of stories on the internet that claim the Sphinx hides the Hall of Records, a repository filled with ancient and secret knowledge. One of the main artifacts of this repository is supposed to be the records of the ancient mythical state of Atlantis. According to legends, the entire library from this city was moved under the Sphinx. The entrance to this library must be located next to the Sphinx's right paw. Many archaeologists tried to find this entrance, but came away empty-handed. Also, there are many images with detailed diagrams of the underground city that consists of a network of tunnels and chambers under the Sphinx. Someone says there are structures as tall as 12-story buildings hiding underground, but there's no evidence of this. Archaeologists, even after millennia, continue to explore the mysterious sculpture. At the same time, many Egyptians don't want to learn more about the Sphinx. They're terrified of awakening something supernatural. In 1998, scientists discovered tunnels leading to empty caves under the Sphinx. They found evidence of earlier excavations there. It's quite possible that someone managed to find the treasures and take them away. Some people believe Egyptians found some kind of artifact under the Sphinx that has the power of unknown advanced technologies. The artifact is so powerful that it can change the course of history. Of course, most theories are just fairy tales of conspiracy fans, but it's a confirmed fact that the Sphinx hides a system of caves and rooms. There are so many rumors surrounding the Sphinx that it's impossible to understand what's true and what's false. In any case, it's difficult and dangerous to study the sculpture because active excavations can destroy it. And then the entrance to the underground rooms can get blocked by rocks and lost forever. Also, further exploration requires a lot of money, and financing is not always easy to find. But the main reason? It's too risky. There's no guarantee that people will be able to get out of the underground labyrinths. For these reasons, scientists and archaeologists have been exploring this majestic structure for so long. Another famous architectural monument with a secret is Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Everyone admires the images of the US presidents' faces carved into the rock, but few people know that there's a secret room hidden behind the head of Abraham Lincoln. The architect of Mount Rushmore wanted to carve slabs on the rock with the record of the main stages of the country's history. But his plan was too complicated to carry out. Then he was offered to implement it on a much smaller scale, to build a secret room inside the mountain. The idea was to save this knowledge so that future generations will always remember the history of their country. Unfortunately, the architect didn't have time to finish his work. The construction stopped for several decades. But in the late 90s, the project was resumed. Porcelain enamel panels depicting the history of the US were placed in the room. It's possible that these plates will be stored there forever. But people can't see them, at least for now. The room is inaccessible to tourists as it's too difficult to get inside. Another secret room is located in the Empire State Building. More precisely, it's not even a room, but a place where you can take cool photos. Almost all tourists gather on the observation deck of the 86th floor to enjoy a stunning view of Manhattan. But there's another deck with panoramic windows on the 102nd floor. There are way fewer people there because almost no one knows about that place. Fortunately, access to this deck is open to everyone. You probably won't have to wait in line for a long time to take a photo. You'll feel special because you're in such a secret place where there are almost no people. But the coolest place is even higher, on the 103rd floor. This is a spacious observation deck where celebrities get their photographs taken. It's not a public place, but if you know the right people, you can get there. There are almost no security measures on the site. Only a low ledge between you and an abyss. That's why crowds of people are forbidden from coming here. It's not so easy to get there, and you're unlikely to succeed without a guide. First, you need to choose the right elevator that will take you there. Then you'll go through several engineering rooms filled with pipes, electrical panels, and other technical stuff. The final part of your way is a set of stairs inside a tiny corridor. And here you are, at the top of New York. Now we're in Paris. See the Eiffel Tower? Inside it, there are restaurants and observation decks. But if you try hard, you can find a secret apartment. Now it's a museum, but it was built so that people could live in it. The architect of the tower, Gustav Eiffel, created this apartment in 1889 for himself. It's almost at the very top of the Eiffel Tower. Imagine what a beautiful view he observed every day. He was the first and only tenant. No one else could gain access to this place. When the architect passed away, the apartment remained empty for a long time. Only recently, they restored it and turned it into a museum. Inside, the epoch of the last century is recreated. They even put wax figures of Gustav Eiffel, his daughter, and the American inventor Thomas Edison inside the room. This place is filled with an endless stream of passengers, office workers running late, visitors from other cities, noise, and train whistles. At Grand Central Station in New York, among all these sounds, you can hear the sound of a ball hitting a racket, if you're in the right place. A real tennis court is hidden inside New York Central Station. It belongs to a tennis club that arranges corporate games for employees of many companies. The club was opened in the 60s. Now we're moving to London, Charing Cross Road. It isn't easy to find one secret place here. To do this, you need to look carefully at your feet. Do you see these sewer grates in the asphalt? Inside them, you can notice two signs with the name Little Compton Street. Yeah, there's another street right below you. It disappeared from all maps at the end of the 19th century. Charing Cross Road was built over it. The identification signs that you see are part of old engineering tunnels. There's another interesting place in London. It's located in the southeast corner of Trafalgar Square. At first glance, it looks like a thick lamppost, but there are too many tourists walking around. You come closer and realize that one person can easily fit inside the post. The lamppost belongs not to an electrician, but to a police officer. Yeah, this is the smallest police station in the world. It was built in the 1930s and used as a watch post. Officers had to sit there one by one and watch Trafalgar Square. That always attracted a lot of pickpockets and all kinds of other criminals.
Imagine brushing sand off a stone wall that no living person has touched in 5,000 years. Before the Great Pyramid existed, before the famous pharaohs we learn about in school, before Egypt was even one unified country, that is exactly what just happened in the Egyptian desert, at a place called Jabal al-Tair, where archaeologists have opened two tombs that had been hiding under the sand for around 5,000 years. And what they found inside might quietly rewrite the origin story of the pyramids themselves. Jabal al-Tair sits on the eastern bank of the Nile River, about 150 miles south of Cairo. You've probably never heard of it, and honestly, that's fair. It has never had the star power of the Valley of the Kings or the Pyramids of Giza. But when an Egyptian team of archaeologists started digging there, the ground turned out to be hiding far more than anyone expected. Layer by layer, the site revealed itself as one giant cemetery that people kept using for thousands of years. Now, before we go any further, let's get our bearings, because ancient Egyptian history is long, really long. So here is a quick, painless timeline. First came what experts call the pre-dynastic era. That simply means the time before the pharaohs, when Egypt was not yet one country, but a patchwork of farming villages along the Nile. Then, around 3100 BCE, a king united the land, and Egypt's first dynasty began. That's the very first family of pharaohs. The famous pyramids of Giza would not appear for roughly another 500 years. And way at the other end of the story, more than 2,000 years later, comes the late period, the final chapter when the last homegrown pharaohs sat on the throne. Around the same time, the ancient Greeks were building their temples. Got it? Villages first, then the first kings, then the pyramids, and finally the last pharaohs. That's the whole map you need for this video. Here is what makes Jabal al-Tayr so special. It has graves from almost that entire stretch of time. Generation after generation across thousands of years, people kept choosing this same patch of desert to bury their dead. It was like an eternal address for the afterlife. But the real headline is a pair of tombs built at the very dawn of Egyptian civilization, right around the time of those first kings. And they are unlike anything researchers expected to find here. To understand why, picture what a tomb looked like back then. At first, it was nothing fancy. Basically a pit dug into the ground, lined with bricks and coated with plaster. A hole in the earth and a fair well. But once the first pharaohs took power, everything changed. Kings were buried in bigger and fancier tombs, and their tombs got a new feature. A flat-topped, bench-shaped building sitting above the ground called a mastaba. Think of it as a storage house packed with everything the dead person might need in the next life, and also a giant billboard announcing someone very important is buried here. Now here is where our two new tombs get exciting. When the team studied their layout, they noticed something striking. The design looks remarkably similar to the tomb of a king named Horden, who was one of the most powerful rulers of that first dynasty. His tomb, built far away at a sacred site called Abydos, was the biggest royal tomb of its time, with a ritual annex, 2 large storage rooms, and a jaw-dropping 133 extra chambers surrounding the burial room itself. So why does that matter? Because finding echoes of that royal blueprint way out at Jabal al-Tayr means architectural ideas were already traveling up and down the Nile, shared between distant communities, possibly even before Egypt became one country. In other words, ancient Egypt had trends. The tomb design was one of them, spreading from place to place the way fashion spreads today. But the biggest surprise was hiding in the walls themselves. As the archaeologists cleared away the sand from the first tomb, they realized its walls were not built evenly. They are deliberately wider and thicker at the bottom, then get gradually thinner toward the top. That might sound like a boring detail, but it's actually a quiet stroke of genius. It means these builders, working 5,000 years ago, already understood how to handle weight. Let the heavy base carry the load, and the whole structure stays standing, instead of crumbling under its own mass. Sound familiar? It should. That is the same basic idea behind the pyramids, including the Great Pyramid, which would later rise 481 feet into the sky. The people who built these tombs could never have imagined such a giant, and yet, without knowing it, they may have been writing the first rough draft, one carefully tapered wall at a time. And the craftsmanship does not stop there. Both tombs were built from stone blocks that workers cut, hauled, and set in place under the brutal Egyptian sun. Time was not kind to the first tomb. Centuries later, people carried off some of its blocks, probably recycling them into other buildings. Still, enough stone survived for researchers to spot faint lines on the surfaces, telltale marks left behind by the ancient cutting process. It's like finding the tool marks of a carpenter who died 50 centuries ago. The team also found that the walls had been reinforced with large wooden beams. Some braced small sections, others ran along the entire length of a wall. That is shockingly clever engineering for such an early date, and rare surviving proof of how things were actually built back then. The second tomb, sitting just south of the first, follows almost the same plan, but it got lucky. Stone thieves mostly left it alone, so its blocks still sit exactly where ancient hands placed them. For archaeologists, that is pure gold, a well-preserved window into how Egypt's earliest builders actually worked, and future study of it may reveal even more about the people who raised it. And the tombs are only part of the story. Nearby, the team uncovered even older graves, from that pre-dynastic village era before any pharaoh existed. The dead were buried curled up, almost as if sleeping, wrapped in mats woven from plants. Beside some of them sat pottery jars with distinctive black rims, the signature style of the cultures that came right before Egypt's unification. Then, at the opposite end of the timeline, the diggers found graves from the late period, thousands of years younger, some still holding pieces of wooden coffins. Put it all together, and Jabal al-Tayr becomes something extraordinary. One burial ground that captures nearly the entire arc of ancient Egypt, from simple villagers wrapped in mats, to engineered stone tombs, to the final pharaohs. It's like a time-lapse of a whole civilization written in graves. So what does it all mean? It means the road to the pyramids did not begin at Giza. It began centuries earlier in forgotten places like this, where nameless builders experimented with stone, wood, and weight, testing ideas their descendants would one day push to breathtaking heights. These modest tombs may have been early prototypes of one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. And the best part? The story is not over. Egypt's Ministry of Tourism says work at the site is ongoing, with more secrets still waiting under the surface. More tombs and more answers may soon see the light of day, or, as the ancient Egyptians might have put it, the light of Ra. 5,000 years of silence are ending, one brushstroke at a time. If you enjoyed this trip into Egypt's deep past, stick around, because the sands are far from finished giving up their treasures.
The Great Pyramid was created as the final resting place of ancient Egyptian monarch Khufu. According to legend, French leader Napoleon entered the Great Pyramid and came back out looking shaken and super pale. He never revealed what he saw inside, but whatever it was is said to have affected him for the rest of his life. When Napoleon entered the pyramid, he would have walked through a super tight and ascending passageway. He'd then go through another passageway, known as the Great Chamber. This corridor would have been much taller than the previous one, and would have cobbles too. He'd then reach the King's Chamber, the centerpiece of the Great Pyramid, which was lined with huge blocks of granite. But it wouldn't have looked as grand as we might imagine. There are no hieroglyphics decorating its walls, as Egyptians only began decorating the burial chambers of pyramids much later on. The pharaoh's tombs deep inside the pyramid would have also been filled with treasures, from chunks of gold to the world's most expensive jewelry. But this would have all been looted a long time ago. The only thing that probably would have been left in there would have been a huge sarcophagus, which would have once contained the king's mummy. He'd also have to walk past the queen's chamber. This room most likely didn't hold any queens though, as pyramids were usually only built for one person. There are mysterious tunnels leading from here. To this day, no one is really sure what they're there for. And that's not the only mysterious and creepy thing Napoleon may have encountered, as stories of pharaohs leaving ancient curses on pyramids go way back. Many pyramids had warnings written on the outside, telling of horrifying things that would happen to those who entered and disturbed the peace. We might not know what exactly Napoleon found in the Great Pyramid that scared him so much, but we know for sure what was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Tutankhamun was an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who was only 8 or 9 years old when he took to the throne. He became a cultural phenomenon when his tomb was discovered almost completely intact in 1922. His pyramid sits in the Valley of Kings in Thebes, modern Luxor, which is in Egypt. Unlike the Great Pyramid, Tutankhamun's tomb was covered in beautiful wall decorations. The walls told the story of how he would travel to the afterlife through the underworld. Egyptians believed all people would have to take this journey, so they would fill their tombs with objects and paintings to help them get there. There'd also be spells painted on the walls. They believed this would help people pass over to the next realm. The journey would be pretty long, and for that reason, the ancient Egyptians would also fill the pyramids with food. Tutankhamun's pyramid was filled with 8 fruit baskets. They even found something called gingerbread fruit in there. The rooms were jam-packed with furniture, statues, clothes, and staves, amongst a whole bunch of other things. You'd likely find a lot of clothes and expensive jewelry in the pyramids as well. The ancient Egyptians wanted their ancestors to travel in style to the afterlife. They put Tutankhamun in his final resting place with over 50 pieces of clothing, all of the highest quality. There were tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses, and a ton of jewelry. Bracelets, pendants, necklaces, rings, and scarabs for protection were all found inside. Each of them was made of gold or precious stones. There were also fans made of ostrich feathers to keep the old pharaoh cool in the hot Egyptian sun. But the temperature inside the pyramids never actually went above 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The ancient Egyptians developed a super cool air conditioning system that we don't fully understand even today. Tutankhamun's pyramid also contained 130 walking sticks made from ebony, ivory, silver, and gold to help him on his journey. There were 3 chariots hidden away in case he got tired of all the walking. They also put 11 boat paddles inside, but there was no sign of any boat. The pyramids would be littered with the pharaoh's favorite scents and perfumes. During the excavation of Tutankhamun's pyramid, it quickly became clear that it had been robbed during ancient times. There was damage to doors and traces of oils left in empty jars. It looks like someone raided the pyramid for gold and the scents, perfumes, and oils that had been left for King Tut. There was still a bit of perfume, which was made from coconut oil and frankincense, left in one bottle. It seems like Pharaoh Tutankhamun loved board games. There was an ivory traveling set of senet in his pyramid. Although we don't know for sure exactly how to play it, we have figured out it was sort of an ancient Egyptian version of backgammon. It looks like it was a 2-player game where the goal was to knock your opponent off the board. Not really sure who Tutankhamun's mummy was supposed to play with, though. The ancient Egyptians had some rituals that may seem pretty strange to us. For example, they used to shave their eyebrows off if they ever lost a cat. So it's not too surprising they put some really weird things inside pyramids. Archaeologists discovered a collection of mummified cats and scarab beetles in pyramids that date back more than 4,000 years. They were found in the pyramids of Saqqara, which is south of Cairo. They also found a bunch of makeup kits and mirrors inside. Makeup was worn proudly by both men and women in ancient Egyptian times. Eyeliner was the most popular cosmetic. The Rosetta Stone was one of the best discoveries ever made in pyramids. It was found by our man Napoleon Bonaparte and his team. It's a black granite rock that dates back to 196 BCE. It's transcribed in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. When it was translated in 1822, we got the key to understanding ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics for the very first time. The discovery of Queen Hatshepsut's mummy in 1903 changed our understanding of the Egyptians forever. After she had passed away, her successor, Thutmose III, removed most of the evidence of her reign, so we basically knew nothing about Egypt's first great female leader. She's now gone on to become one of the few and most famous female pharaohs of Egypt. Pharaoh Khufu even had a fully fledged boat in his pyramid. archaeologists uncovered more than 1,200 pieces of a giant boat near the Great Pyramid at Giza. They reassembled the boat, and it's a whopping 144 feet long. It's most likely a solar boat, which was designed to carry the resurrected king with the deity Ra. Fun fact, the Pyramid of Giza is the last remaining of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The other 6 are the Hanging Gardens, the Colossus, the Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum, the Lighthouse, and the Statue of Zeus. This pyramid was also the world's tallest man-made structure for 3,800 years, and it's the biggest pyramid in Egypt. It took a staggering 2.3 million blocks of limestone, and some weighed as much as 80 tons. It took an incredible 100,000 laborers and a whopping 23 years to build. Its original height was a mega 480 feet. In 2017, archaeologists discovered something weird about Egypt's Great Pyramid. There's a hidden void that's at least 100 feet long, and no one really knows why it's there or what's actually inside it. The weird void is the first inner structure discovered within the 4,500-year-old pyramid since the 1800s. Scientists used cosmic rays to detect the massive hole, but are still no closer today to finding out what's inside. The ancient Egyptians took a lot of care building the pyramids, and everything was strategically placed and structurally sound, so it's super unlikely that this hole is due to blocks falling over time. Loads of pyramids also contain small model figurines called ushabti. These represented attendants. They believed they would come to life to serve the pharaohs in the afterlife. But it's amazing that all this stuff actually fit inside. There isn't actually a huge amount of space inside the structures. It's mostly just rock.
There are countless doors all over the world that haven't been opened for decades, and even centuries. The question is why? It seems that nowadays you can open any door you want. The truth is that some doors were sealed for a grave reason. And so far, nobody has found out what treasures and mysteries they hide. Here are 4 doors that keep their secrets all too well. The Taj Mahal. First up, we've got the Taj Mahal in India, one of the most romantic places in the world. Shah Jahan commissioned it in 1631 and dedicated it to his 3rd wife, who he loved like crazy. They were married for 19 years and had a whopping 14 kids together. But unfortunately, she passed away while giving birth to their last baby. Shah Jahan was heartbroken and decided to build an epic tomb to remember her by. The construction took a whopping 20 years to finish. The building has quite an interesting layout. The design is super unusual with these 4 massive 130-foot tall minarets that stand on the corners of a huge platform. They're not just there for looks. Back in the 17th century, architects were having some serious issues with buildings collapsing under their own weight. So, the chief architect of the Taj Mahal made sure to place those minarets as far away from the tomb as possible. And he even tilted them in a way so that if they did fall, they wouldn't wreck the rest of the Taj Mahal. Talk about planning ahead. The Taj Mahal is hiding some crazy secrets. There are sealed rooms all over the place that nobody is allowed to enter. And if you check out photos of the building from the riverside, you can spot 2 basements. But guess what? They're sealed up too. Nobody knows what's inside or why they've been locked up since the time of Shah Jahan. Apparently, there's a good reason why those rooms are off limits. Some researchers think that they were built using marble, which turns into a different substance called calcium carbonate if it's exposed to carbon dioxide. And when that happens, little bits of marble start chipping off like crazy. To make matters worse, there's no air flowing into these rooms. That means that if too much CO2 builds up in the basement, the 4 minarets could collapse. But wait, there's more. Some people think that the body of Shah Jahan's wife can be found in one of these sealed-up rooms in pristine condition. Why not? Who knows what the mysterious rooms might keep? The Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx of Giza is shrouded in mystery. It's not just the largest monolith statue in the world, but it's also a hybrid creature with a woman's head and a lion's body that originates from Egyptian and Greek mythology. It's also very ancient. It's estimated to be around 4,500 years old. The construction of this marvel took about 3 years and required 100 workers who were not slaves and were treated with delicacies like sheep and goat meat. It is also thought that it used to be much more massive than it is now. Archaeologists found huge stone blocks and abandoned toolkits near the site. However, the real secrets of the Sphinx lie underground, near its paws. A group of scientists used a seismograph to detect 2 hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx's paws. Some people think that these rooms might be the legendary Hall of Records, which holds ancient scrolls revealing the secrets of the universe. I mean, that's way cooler than any library I've ever been to. Rumor has it that the Egyptians even had info on Atlantis stashed down there, which is like a super old version of a conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, we can't go on an adventure to check it out just yet. The chambers presumably have 2 entrances, but both remain sealed. The researchers haven't yet received the green light to check out their theory. Let's hope they won't keep us in suspense forever. Sri Padmanabhaswamy Temple. This temple is located in the beautiful state of Kerala in India. This temple is famous for more than just its breathtaking beauty. Underneath the temple there are 6 vaults, creatively named A, B, C, D, E, and F. The enormous iron doors to these chambers add to the mystery of what's behind them. A few years back, the authorities decided to open these vaults to the world, but it wasn't an easy task. You can't just open the doors and enter the vaults. It required a lot of work. It took them a while, but finally, in 2011, they opened 5 of the 6 chambers. And guess what they found? Tons of treasure. Bags of gold, precious gemstones, and priceless diamond jewelry. The estimated worth of everything found in the vaults is a whopping $1 trillion. It's like the temple was the real-life inspiration for Aladdin's Cave of Wonders. But wait, I said 5 of the 6. What happened to the last one? Vault B has remained closed, but not for lack of trying. They simply didn't manage to open it. There is even a belief that it's fatally cursed. Legend says that only a saint or sage can break the curse by chanting a specific mantra. But no one has been able to do this yet, presumably because we don't have saints or sages at our disposal. There is also rumor that in the 30s some temple invaders tried to enter Vault B to do some good old looting. But they never reached their target. Apparently terrible snakes materialized out of nowhere and chased the gang away. But of course, this is just an urban legend, and there is not proof of that. However, it is said that the Auditor General dealing with the temple claimed that Vault B had been opened at least 7 times since 1990, and nothing bad happened to anyone who entered. Who knows? Maybe we should send Indiana Jones to check it out. The First Emperor's Tomb. Deep under a hill, completely undisturbed and surrounded by dangerous traps, lies an ancient 2,000-year-old tomb. It belongs to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. He was born in the Qin state and became king when he was just a boy. But when he grew up and gained full power, he united the warring states ancient China was divided into by conquering them. After that, he created the Qin dynasty. When he died in 210 BCE, they buried him deep underground in a massive tomb. And when I say massive, I mean massive! Back in 1974, some farmers in Xi'an, China, stumbled upon something strange while digging a well, a huge terracotta soldier. This discovery led to an extensive archaeological dig that has continued for over 40 years, revealing a collection of thousands of clay soldiers. The unique thing about these soldiers is that each one has its own unique features, from hairstyles to facial expressions. It's believed that there could be up to 8,000 of these soldiers, but only 2,000 have been found so far. Interestingly, the central tomb, which is believed to be the resting place of the emperor, is still untouched. In ancient records, there are references to a vast underground city that the emperor built, complete with scenic towers, palaces, and whatnot. Sima Qian, a Han Dynasty historian, wrote that the tomb was adorned with treasures and had space for hundreds of officials, but the lack of technology to properly examine the site is what's holding things up. Qin Shi Huang was surrounded by liquid mercury in his tomb, with 2 of the streams representing the major rivers of China, Yellow River and Yangtze. The ancient Chinese believed that mercury could provide immortality, but it could have also caused the emperor's death since he regularly took mercury pills to prolong his life. The dangerous levels of mercury contamination in the soil near the tomb are the main reason why scientists are reluctant to explore it. It could be very dangerous both for people and for the environment. Now, if I had to choose which door to open, I'd probably go for the one that doesn't lead to a tomb surrounded by poisonous mercury. Call me crazy, but I'd like to avoid any potential health hazards.
X-rays are a type of invisible radiation that can pass through our bodies and objects. They're very important in the field of medicine because they allow doctors to see inside our bodies without having to perform surgery. Now, let's dive into how X-rays work. They're a kind of electromagnetic radiation, just like light or radio waves. However, they have much higher energy than light, which makes them able to go through objects that light cannot. Imagine you have a powerful flashlight. If you try to shine it through a wall, the light won't go through because the wall is too thick. But these rays have enough energy to go through walls and even our bodies. The discovery of X-rays happened by accident in the late 19th century. A scientist was experimenting with cathode rays, which are a type of radiation. He was working in his lab and noticed that a nearby fluorescent screen started to glow, even though it was not directly exposed to the cathode rays. He realized that something invisible was causing the fluorescence, and he named it X-ray, because X is the mathematical symbol for something unknown. He continued experimenting with such rays and discovered that they could pass through many objects, like flesh and bones, but not through denser materials like metal. He also found that X-rays could create images on photographic plates, just like a camera takes pictures. The way this works is quite fascinating. Imagine you're standing in front of a bright light and you hold your hand in front of your face. Your hand blocks the light and you can't see through it. But if you place a sheet of tissue paper in front of your hand, some light will pass through, and you'll be able to see the outline of your hand. X-rays work in a similar way. When a doctor wants to take an X-ray of a part of your body, they will ask you to stand or lie down next to a machine. This device has a special plate that can capture the image. Let's say the doctor wants to further examine your arm. They will place the X-ray plate on one side of your arm and the machine on the other side. Then, the machine will produce a controlled burst of X-rays that pass through your arm. Remember how we talked about the tissue paper allowing some light to pass through? Well, in this case, some of those X-rays will go through your arm, while others will be absorbed or blocked by the denser parts of your body, like bones. The plate captures the X-rays that pass through your arm, and it creates an image. This image shows the bones and other structures inside your body, allowing the doctor to see if there are any problems or injuries. Now, you might be wondering why X-rays can pass through some things but not others. It has to do with the density and composition of the objects. Denser materials like bones absorb more X-rays, so they appear white in the image. So when you look at the result, you'll see your bones as white shapes. Other tissues like muscles and organs are less dense and allow some of those rays to pass through, so they appear as gray shadows. What if I told you there's a whole new way you can peek inside objects, but without using X-rays? I'm not talking about magic powers. Take a comfortable seat while I explain what myography is. This fascinating scientific technique allows us to see inside objects and even beneath the Earth's surface using a special type of particle called a muon. These elementary particles are very similar to electrons, but they're much heavier. They are created high up in the Earth's atmosphere when cosmic rays, which are particles coming from space, collide with the air molecules. Now, muons are special because they can pierce through different materials. They can pass through rock, soil, and even buildings. Scientists realized this potential back in the 1950s when they were studying cosmic rays and noticed that some of the particles could pass through thick materials. The first myography experiments took place in the 60s. Specialists discovered that muons can be detected using special devices called muon detectors. These detectors are usually placed underground or in specially designed laboratories to shield them from other particles and background radiation. Now let's dive into how myography actually works. Imagine you have a large object, like a pyramid, a mountain, or even an ancient statue, and you want to see what's inside without damaging it. First, detectors are positioned around the object or in the area you want to examine. These detectors are sensitive to muons and can track their paths. When such a particle passes through a detector, it leaves a trace, like footprints in the sand. By collecting data from multiple detectors, scientists can reconstruct the paths. Here's where things get really cool. The Earth's atmosphere acts like a natural filter for muons. It turns out that the more massive an object is, the more particles it will block. So, if you have a large, dense object like a mountain, fewer muons will pass through it compared to a smaller, less dense object, like an empty box. This difference in the number of particles that reach the detectors can give us clues about what's inside the objects. Scientists use computer algorithms and mathematical techniques to analyze the data and create images. These images represent the density distribution of the object being studied. It's like creating a map that shows where the densest areas are and where there's gaps inside the object. The concept of muography is similar to using shadows to understand the shape and size of an object. Imagine you're standing in front of a bright light and you place your hand between the light source and a wall. You'll see a shadow of your hand on the wall. Based on the shape and size of the shadow, you can get an idea of what your hand looks like, even though you can't see it directly. This technique has been used to study various objects and structures. For example, scientists have used it to explore the inside of volcanoes and pyramids, and even to investigate the structure of mountains and the Earth's crust. With the help of this amazing technique, scientists have now uncovered new information about the Great Pyramid of Giza. They discovered something that had eluded tomb raiders for centuries. They found a hidden chamber. And guess what they named it? The Big Void. Yeah, I know, not the most creative name. They even used 3 different muon detection techniques just to be super sure that it was indeed a big, mysterious void inside the grandest pyramid of them all. Once news got out about this mind-boggling discovery, Egyptian authorities couldn't resist the temptation to explore further. So, they brought in an endoscope camera to confirm the existence of this epic void. So, they inserted a camera through one of the openings underneath the entrance, and voila! It revealed a corridor. More so, the corridor had a chevron ceiling. I can't help but imagine the ancient Egyptians using it as a cool dance floor. Another team of scientists decided to take another shot at scanning this newfound void. According to them, the Great Pyramid of Giza is a pioneer in the pyramid game. It used a technique called chevron to cover internal structures and keep them from collapsing. Now, why did the ancient Egyptians build this corridor and the grand void it leads to? One theory suggests that the corridor was built to relieve pressure inside the pyramid. Another theory says that the void could be a result of the pyramid's construction process. It could have been an internal ramp used to move roof blocks into position, and then it was left there or filled loosely with rubble. According to other enthusiastic explorers, there might be another burial chamber waiting to be discovered. They believe that the pyramids were built with a dash of randomness in the construction process. As the builders worked their magic, they realized that some chambers wouldn't be able to handle the weight of a majestic sarcophagus. So they made adjustments on the fly, creating new plans as they went along.
This summer, you finally decide to go on that once-in-a-lifetime round-the-world trip. The first stop of this exciting adventure is in Europe. You start your journey in Italy, the country of pasta and pizza and delicious gelato. Ah, there it is, the world-renowned Leaning Tower of Pisa. You buy your ticket and get inside the crooked monument. You're about to climb 251 slippery stairs, so watch your step and don't forget to breathe. The white marble stones are astounding, and from time to time, you peep outside to enjoy the view of the city. Congratulations, you've made it! You've reached the top of the bell tower and can take all the selfies you want. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is one of Italy's most iconic landmarks. During your hike up the stairs, a guide tells you it's actually a medieval monument. It was built between the 12th and 14th centuries, taking over 200 years to finish. And in case you're wondering if it's always been tilted, I can say without a doubt, yes it has. Once they finished the third floor, the bell tower started sinking. The thing is, the very name Pisa comes from the Greek word that means marshy land. The ground there is extremely soft, made of clay, mud, and sand. And architects have been trying to save the day ever since they built the tower. At the top of the 185-foot-tall monument, you take your time admiring the city. How many terracotta rooftops can you count? If you walk toward the south side of the monument, you may feel closer to the ground. This is because the Leaning Tower of Pisa tilts toward the south. At one point, it leaned almost 5.5 degrees and still didn't fall. Today, when you visit the monument, the guide might tell you the tower is leaning less. A few years ago, the world's best architects and engineers did some construction works next to the monument to keep it from falling over. They dug several tunnels and took out over 38 cubic meters of soil from under the north side of the tower. So now the tower is tilting at an angle of only 4 degrees. So if you want to take one of those classic photos where you're holding up the tower, you better hurry. Who knows how long the tower will still be leaning? Now it's time for you to make your way to Rome. This city is basically an open-air museum, and you have to check it out for yourself. It's scalding hot, but you're lucky. Today you're visiting the baths of Caracalla. Are you ready for an authentic ancient Roman experience? You enter through what once was a locker room. You'll have to use your imagination. Today, you'll only see 130-foot-tall brick walls here. Romans of every class would spend an hour or two in the baths every day. They would come after a long day at work or before dinner. Imperial bath complexes, such as this one, were usually free, but you had to pay an admission fee. Leaving the locker room, visitors would stop in a heated room where they would receive oil and scrub massage. Then, some people would move on to one of 2 exercise yards. Can you see how ample they were? Here, there were elaborate marble porticos, and you can still see a few fragments of the mosaic-colored floor. If you were in the mood for something more intellectual, you could stop to listen to a philosopher or visit one of the libraries. Now we've arrived at the most impressive room, a caldarium. It was a circular hot steamed room measuring 115 feet in diameter. It had not 1 or 2, but 7 heated pools inside. Above your head, you'd have seen a magnificent dome supported by large granite columns. The entire structure was richly decorated with multicolored glass mosaics and the finest white marble. The complex also housed an indoor Olympic-sized pool with waist-deep water. Today, you can only admire a few reddish walls made of brick and concrete. Emperor Caracalla, like many other Roman emperors, built a mega-complex, and it sure made people happy. After a long international flight, you arrive in Egypt. Get ready for some camel rides and juicy dried fruits. Does anyone here love dates? You leave your hotel at dawn and make your way to the outskirts of Cairo. You drive past the Nile River toward the West Bank. Don't forget to take some pictures. In the distance, you spot a large monument. It's the Great Sphinx of Giza. Can you believe people created this monument over 4,500 years ago? Once you get closer, you see the Great Pyramids just north of the Sphinx. You learn that, unlike the pyramids, the Sphinx was carved directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. Until today, it's one of the largest statues in the world, measuring 66 feet in height and 240 feet in length from paws to tail. The face of the Sphinx looks a tad beaten today, but according to archaeologists, it wasn't always like that. A Photoshop reconstruction of the Sphinx gives it a very different look. As you can see, at one point, the Sphinx's nose was chopped off together with parts of the chin. Scientists believe that the statue is a representation of the great pharaoh Khafra. This is why its face resembles a human so much. Just below the eyes, a dark carved line was added to represent the charcoal eyeliner ancient Egyptians used to wear. Fun fact, this wasn't only a beauty habit. It protected their eyes from ultraviolet rays. In a desert region that gets so much sunlight, this might come in handy. Until today, researchers debate whether or not the Sphinx had a beard. Many believe that if it was meant to depict a pharaoh, it most likely had a braided beard that got destroyed by erosion or humans. Even today, you can still see the remains of a regal headdress on the head of the Sphinx. These head ornaments were associated with power and royalty. Now imagine that the stripes are blue and gold. This is probably what it looked like when the monument was first constructed. There's no evidence of how long it took to build the Sphinx, but it was likely very long, as the carved details are pretty impressive. If you're lucky, your guide might take you to one of the secret chambers inside the statue. If they're real and not just a myth, I mean. The crystalline waters of Greece. Whether you arrive by boat or plane, you're in for a real treat. This is the focal point of archaeological sites. You arrive at Mandrake Marina and Port, but wait a minute, you don't see any monuments around. The Colossus of Rhodes is nowhere to be found at first glance. That's because it was destroyed long ago. Before tumbling down during a mighty earthquake, the great statue was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. If you saw the Colossus in a picture, you would probably mistake it for Lady Liberty. Well, that's actually not a coincidence. Apparently, there's a connection between the Statue of Rhodes and the Statue of Liberty. They were both built as symbols of freedom, and Lady Liberty is often referred to as the modern Colossus. The Colossus stood at 100 feet tall, but today all you see is a concrete jetty with a huge gap in the middle. Now, imagine a bronze statue straddling both ends of the bridge. The Colossus was built back in the 3rd century BCE, and 900 camels took part in the construction. The statue existed for approximately 54 years before it was ruined by a powerful earthquake. It hit the city so hard that all that was left of the statue was one very large foot. Even so, people kept visiting the monument. Are you ready to head home? Thanks for joining me on this journey, and don't forget to tell me what your favorite site was. See you next time!
Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times, houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're also valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof! He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently, some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this: Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies: streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the Sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
Beneath the sands of Luxor, scientists found something that was perhaps never meant to be found. Over 1,000 decorated stone blocks that belonged to the ruined temple of a woman pharaoh. It got us thinking, why was this temple so brutally destroyed, and who was this woman? Her name is Hatshepsut, and she is now considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, but for a long time, history almost forgot her. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, from around 1479 to 1458 BCE. She's remembered for her ambitious building projects, successful military campaigns, and flourishing trade expeditions. It turns out she was one out of 4 women to take the title of pharaoh in Egyptian history. The next woman would have to wait for 1,500 years to reign, and that woman we know as Cleopatra. The story of how Hatshepsut got to be a pharaoh is the most colorful part of this tale. As far as most dynastic rules go, it's usually men that are first in line for royal thrones. In Egypt, that was the same. That's why, when Pharaoh Thutmose I had a daughter as his firstborn, that was a big no-no as far as his succession line went. A few years later, Pharaoh Thutmose I passes away. The crown passed to Thutmose II, who ruled briefly, only to leave the throne to his infant son, Thutmose III. In this scenario, Hatshepsut was this pharaoh's stepmother. So what happened was that Hatshepsut served as advisor to her stepson, since he was too young to rule on his own. But after 7 years, she made an unprecedented move. She decided to seize power and declared herself Pharaoh of Egypt. Now this was not a simple power grab. Hatshepsut understood that if she wanted to rule, she had to present herself as a legitimate king. In a bold move, she adopted the full royal regalia, including the false beard, traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She was often depicted in statues and hieroglyphs as a man, wearing the pharaoh's kilt and headdress. But this wasn't about disguising herself. Experts believe she never tried to hide her identity. Inscriptions on her statues often included feminine titles, like Daughter of Re, or grammatical structures that combined male and female terms, such as His Majesty herself. This showed that while she adopted traditional symbols of kings, she still acknowledged her true gender. But she needed to go even further. To legitimize her rule, she crafted an elaborate origin story. She claimed that the deity Amun himself had visited her mother in the form of her father, Thutmose I, and that she was his divine daughter. Now this was no small claim, since pharaohs were seen as deities on earth. By aligning herself with Amun, she strengthened her right to the throne. In temple carvings, she depicted this divine birth with Amun, presenting her as his rightful heir. These narratives weren't just mythology, they were tools, ensuring her position remained unchallenged. Hatshepsut also took a new name, Ma'at Kari, which translates roughly to "Truth is the soul of the sun god." The word Ma'at was central to Egyptian beliefs. It represented order, justice, and divine balance. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at to ensure Egypt's stability. By calling herself Ma'at Kari, Hatshepsut was likely reinforcing that she was a legitimate and rightful ruler. Her reign was truly great. She led Egypt into an era of peace and prosperity, launching massive building projects and restoring temples across the kingdom. Her most famous achievement was the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari, a pretty impressive architectural masterpiece carved into the cliffs of Luxor. Hatshepsut initiated one of the most ambitious construction projects in ancient Egyptian history, commissioning monuments, temples, and obelisks to immortalize her reign. It's argued that she continued with the construction of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a grand road lined with statues leading to the Karnak Temple. For many, her shining architectural achievement was the towering obelisk she had carved from single pieces of granite. One of these, weighing over 320 tons, still stands today. Now, beyond building, she expanded Egypt's influence through trade. She sent an expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, bringing back riches like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Her fleet of ships sailing the Red Sea marked the first recorded trade mission of its kind, establishing economic ties that would benefit Egypt for generations. Yet, for all of her success, something strange happened after Hatshepsut passed away. Her successor, aka her stepson Thutmose III, who had been overshadowed by her rule, took a drastic step. He ordered her name to be erased from history. Her statues were defaced, her inscriptions chiseled away, and her achievements credited to other rulers. It was as if she had never existed. Some believe Thutmose III wanted to reclaim his rightful place as pharaoh, while others suggest that later rulers, uncomfortable with the idea of a female pharaoh, sought to restore traditional male dominance. The story gets even more tragic. The power struggle between stepmother and stepson continues, since, even after her passing away, Thutmose III built his own temple right next to Hatshepsut's at the Valley of the Kings. But he built his temple with one deliberate modification. His monument was built 11 feet higher than hers. Mind you that this was no accident, it was a symbolic statement. He wanted to overshadow her legacy. But history had other plans. Hatshepsut's legacy started to be rediscovered in the 19th century, and it was only through careful archaeological investigation that her reign was properly recognized. Today, Hatshepsut is remembered as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Her reign, once erased, has been reconstructed through constant archaeological discoveries, proving that her power and influence could not be so easily forgotten. Her resting place had been hidden in plain sight, her body removed from its original chamber in an effort to erase her from history. This final piece of evidence cemented her legacy, proving that even attempts to erase a pharaoh could not really do it. Hatshepsut's grand temple, Djeser-Djeseru, was a stunning architectural feat, designed to immortalize her reign and solidify her divine connection to Amun. But after her death, her successor, Thutmose III, launched that calculated effort to erase her legacy, and parts of her temple were dismantled. Historians still debate why. Was it a dynastic power move, an attempt to restore traditional male rule, or a bid to strengthen Thutmose III's claim to the throne? Maybe he was just a jerk. Whatever the reason, the destruction wasn't immediate. It happened decades after her death, suggesting it might not have been a personal revenge, but a broader political strategy. Yet, despite these efforts, her temple endures, and so does her story, a defiant echo of Egypt's first great female pharaoh. Let's travel through space and time to another place. Dashur, Egypt, is known to be home to several resting places of people from ancient Egypt. In the year 2017, scientists uncovered a long-lost pyramid. They quickly called the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities because they suspected it was going to be a big deal. Unlike most pyramids that were found in the area, this one was completely sealed. Lifting the capstone was a delicate process. When they finally managed to open the pyramid, they expected to find an undisturbed chamber. Instead, it was chaos. The place had been looted, and the personal items of the person that had passed away were scattered all over. But in the middle of the wreckage, they found a chest. Using the latest scanning technology, they managed to read the damaged hieroglyphs on its surface. What they found was unbelievable. The name inscribed there was as clear as day: Princess Hatshepsut. Ooh. The discovery made in 2017 also opened up a lot of questions. After further analysis, scientists discovered the remains belonged to another Hatshepsut. It belonged to a princess that lived during Egypt's 13th dynasty. The fact that a resting place had been looted before it was sealed made scientists wonder, were these ancient people trying to hide something about this public figure? And why is there almost no record about her in ancient Egyptian history? Ooh, stay tuned.
You find yourself at a food fair in Iceland when you see it for the first time. Volcano bread. You eat a slice and oddly enough, it actually tastes good. Unsure of how this works, you check out the baking process. Is this kitchen really strange looking, or is it just me? The baking spot is in nature, specifically in a hot springs field. You better watch your steps so you don't get burned by the hot vapor jolting from the ground. Now, a local baker shares their traditional rye bread recipe with you. Rye flour, check. Yeast, check. You mix it all together and pour it into a metal pot. Next on the list is digging the hole where you'll place the pot to bake. You dig for about 16 inches until you can see the water bubbling from the ground. If you want to do it like a local, you'll use your finger to check the water temperature. Yikes, that's hot. Actually, the ground is heated by lava. Iceland is one of the most volcanic regions in the world, with over 30 active volcanoes at any one time. After you bury the bread in volcanic soil, you leave it there and wait 24 hours until it's ready. The next day, the bread is fully baked and super tasty. And the best part is, you just participated in an ancient Icelandic tradition. People have been doing this since at least the 1800s. Imagine it's your first day of work in a museum, and your assigned task is to clean the mask of Tutankhamun. You grab your cleaning utensils and then, oh no, this can't be happening. You just broke Tutankhamun's beard. I never wish this to happen to anyone, but this is actually a true story. Back in 2014, an employee at the Egyptian Museum knocked off the beard of Tutankhamun's mask and glued it back on, hoping no one would notice. This mask was discovered in 1922 and is considered one of the 10 symbols of our human civilization. Oh, and the best part of this story? It took historians until 2016 to discover the poor glue job. So, if you visited the museum between 2004 and 2016, maybe you saw the glued beard. If I say Sahara, what comes to mind? An infinite desert landscape, right? Well, according to scientists, the Sahara isn't always a desert. From time to time, it becomes green. But you probably won't be seeing this in your lifetime. Every 10,000 years, the Sahara lives through a humid period, where the sand gives way to lush green vegetation and sparkling lakes. This happens due to a tilt in the Earth's axis, which affects different weather patterns around the globe. Can you imagine the Sphinx surrounded by rainforest? It's mind-blowing. And speaking of the Sahara, say you traveled back to 1800 BCE. If you timed it right, you might get to see the construction of the so-called Black Pyramid in the city of Dashur. These are not the famous Giza pyramids, but they serve the similar purpose of being a final resting place. In 1892, archaeologists excavating the area found an important part of the Black Pyramid that was lost for centuries. The benben, also called a pyramidion, was the tip of ancient Egyptian pyramids. A benben consists of a solid block, usually made of limestone. Most of them were covered with gold and reflected the first rays of light from the sun every day. Can anyone get me a time machine, please? Remember when you ate something really spicy, your cheeks turned red? Apparently, that can happen to birds too. For example, canaries can change colors after eating peppers. These birds have a special pigment that allows them to switch shades depending on their diet. So, if a yellow canary eats red peppers, it can turn orange or red. Can rocks move on the ground on their own? Well, you might be under that impression if you visit Racetrack Playa in California. The site is a dry lake bed and home to one of the world's strangest phenomena, the so-called sailing stones. Think 100-pound rocks moving around alone, leaving behind trails as long as 1,500 feet. They were discovered in the 1900s, and until recently, no one was lucky enough to be on the site while they were moving. It was only in 2014, after much observation and research, that scientists solved this mystery. The sailing stones appeared because of the perfect balance between wind, ice, and water. When it rains, the water that falls on the ground freezes and forms a coat of ice above the ground. If it's windy, the rocks are easily pushed around, sailing along the lake bed. But hey, if you ever visit Racetrack Playa, don't disturb the rocks. On the western coast of France, you'll find the vacation hotspot known as the island of Ré. It attracts tourists looking for scenic landscapes and beautiful beaches, but that's not all it's famous for. There, an extraordinary phenomenon occurs when two different wave patterns collide with each other, something called a cross sea. It's almost as if the sea were a checkerboard, divided into hundreds of squares. And no, it's not an optical illusion. A cross sea only happens in places where different quality waters meet. For a tourist to see the cross sea in Ré, this probably means that there was a storm in a different sea nearby. This stormy water travels with the help of currents and meets the water of Ré, creating these oddly shaped riptides. Oh, and apart from this island and Israel, there's nowhere else in the world where you could see such a thing. The following sight will either give you goosebumps or make you marvel at its weirdness. I'd say it depends on the time of day you visit. Next to the small town of Gryfina in Poland, you'll find a very unusual sight, a pine tree forest where each tree is bent at its base. If you visit during the daytime, I guess you'll be fascinated by these trees' sharp 90-degree curves. You can even use their trunks as a stool if you decide to have a picnic, for example. But visiting the site at night will most likely give you chills. A thin layer of fog hovers around, making the forest seem quite unwelcoming. Scientists still can't explain why the trees are the way they are. So, are you a daytime or nighttime visitor? You went for a hike and suddenly encountered a big cloud of fog. This may ruin your photo ops, but there's one thing you can hope for. Foggy days are the perfect conditions for a phenomenon called fog bow, otherwise known as a white rainbow. This happens because of numerous tiny water droplets that cause fog, smaller than 0.002 inches. So, instead of the multicolored bow, you get a transparent one, with red outer edges and a bluish inner edge. Now, say you're roaming in a little town in Europe, appreciating the century-old buildings and good summer weather. You feel hungry and decide to type into your Google Maps the name of that restaurant your friend recommended. Ah, it's only 10 minutes away by foot. You follow the blue dot on your GPS and arrive at your destination, quick and easy. We all love this free piece of technology, don't we? But what if I told you that the US spends over $2 million daily to maintain the satellites to make it work? Yep, that's the price. And to implement it, they spent over $12 billion US. Have you ever heard of something called a natural snowball? This could be proof that nature is really perfect. In 2016, the beaches of the Gulf of Ob in northwest Siberia were filled with rows of giant snowballs. Think balls measuring up to 3 feet across. This rare, yet beautiful natural phenomenon happens when small pieces of ice are rolled by strong winds and water. The further they roll, the more ice they gather, and the more that ice is polished. They end up as giant, perfectly shaped snowballs. They look pretty amazing on their own, but it's quite a sight when hundreds of them are together.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement, no hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
You're heading to Spain with a team of archaeologists to try to find some ancient artifacts. You get lucky and uncover one of the greatest treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age. Iberian refers to the Bronze Age culture of Portugal and Spain. So you find and unearth coins, jewelry, vases, vessels, and two pretty strange items. One is something like a part of a scepter, and the other resembles a bracelet. And you know what's strange about them? They're connected with space. In 1963, several miles away from the city of Vienna, Spain, scientists discovered the treasure of Vienna, one of the most significant gold hoards from the Bronze Age. Interestingly, are there bronze treasures from the Golden Age? Never mind. All the gold found dates back to sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE, except for that scepter and bracelet. They were made by inhabitants of another planet, so their production date is unknown. Okay, that's a joke. However, a small part of this joke is true. When scientists studied the found gold, they discovered that those two items were made of iron. So what, you might think? Well, the catch is that in the Bronze Age, people didn't mine or manufacture iron. Work with this metal began around 850 BCE, about 400 to 700 years after the creation of the treasure of Vienna. How is this possible? A clue to this mystery can be found in ancient Egypt. In the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, an iron dagger was found, which was also made of similar iron. But this dagger was much more valuable than all the others. And that's because it was made from a space object, a meteorite. Yeah, that bracelet and scepter were also made of meteoritic iron. Its difference from Earth metal is that cosmic iron has a high nickel content, so it all makes sense. People from the Bronze Age couldn't mine iron from the deep bowels of our planet, but nothing prevented them from collecting iron falling from the sky. Just imagine how cool it is to have jewelry or a dagger made of material that has traveled millions of years through the vast expanses of space. Perhaps it even contains particles of an ancient extinct star. Today, these two artifacts from the treasure of Vienna are the oldest recorded items in the Iberian Peninsula made of meteoritic iron. Now, with everything in its place, you can turn your attention to all the wealth of the treasure of Vienna. It contains 66 items: bowls, bracelets, bottles, gold jewelry, 3 silver bottles, and an amber gold button. 22 pounds of ancient gold. People hid it, and only after 3,000 years we were able to discover it. This archaeologist's dream can be found in the Vienna Museum, where exhibits from different time periods are presented, from prehistoric times like 50,000 years ago to the present day. Items from the Iberian period, from the Roman period, from the Arab civilization. You can find not only jewelry and coins, but there are also remnants of columns, ceramics, and other architectural artifacts. The collection is considered one of the most important prehistoric treasures of Europe. And the coolest thing is that you can see it all with your own eyes for just €2, which is about $2. Go to Vienna, find the museum, and enjoy. Hey buddy, I heard you have a metal detector. Could you help me find a hammer I left somewhere in the field? Your old farmer friend asks. You take a metal detector and go searching, but instead of a hammer, you find hundreds, even thousands of silver coins worth $2 million. You're so happy that the farmer lost that hammer, and now you're rich. Stop! Considering that this land belongs to the farmer, would you tell him about the find or take it with you? In reality, neither of these options happened. In 1992, Eric Laws was helping a farmer search for a lost hammer in a field near Hoxne, Suffolk, England. The metal detector stumbled upon a hidden treasure, a huge one. There were silver spoons, gold jewelry, more than 500 gold coins, and about 14,000 silver ones. Eric Laws accidentally discovered the largest collection of gold and silver from the late Roman period in Britain. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he and the farmer didn't receive the treasure. It's now in the British Museum. Let's move away from the farmer's field to somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Imagine you're a scuba diver. There was a strong storm yesterday, but now with the water calm, you dive in and discover the seabed covered with gold dinars. This story happened in 2015. The coins which the storm brought to the shore might have been minted even before the First Crusade that started in 1096. This collection is one of the most impressive archaeological finds in the world. All these treasures surely can make the heads of those who find them spin, but they end up in a museum. And that's a good thing, because such wealth can drive a person crazy. A metal detector and a diving suit helped people discover ancient treasures. What's next? How about a dog? Yes, it could be perhaps a great replacement for a metal detector, by the way. So in 2013, 2 people were walking their dog in Northern California on their property. Suddenly, they discovered a rusty can filled with coins minted from 1847 to 1894. There were about 1,500 coins, and they all were gold. Another chance for a carefree rich future? Not this time. The find caused a lot of controversy among specialists. There was one version, according to which these coins could have been stolen from the US Mint. But later, the US Mint debunked this suggestion as they'd never had this gold in their storage. Anyway, it's interesting what the point was in hiding it all in someone else's yard. Some thief risked their freedom and life to get rich. When they succeeded, they just hid the coins as if they never existed. What a strange deal. Coins, jewelry, meteorite items, it's all cool. But let's end our video with something grand and epic. Archaeologists were conducting research near the Mediterranean coast of Egypt and discovered a treasure trove inside a sunken temple and sanctuary. Despite the waves, earthquakes, and seawater, the massive find was preserved in a not bad condition. The temple was built a very long time ago and collapsed in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. It was an important structure in ancient Egypt. People considered this place holy. Pharaohs came to the temple to seek help from the higher powers of Egyptian mythology to obtain titles for their rule. Titles of kings of the universe. For many people, this place was like the center of the universe. and now it lies forgotten on the seabed, almost ruined. Time spares nothing. Researchers found out the temple had been part of an ancient port city. A long time ago, an earthquake occurred in this area and destroyed the city. Tidal waves softened the ground and dragged the town into the Mediterranean Sea. While studying the temple, scientists found many secret treasures there: silver ceremonial instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster vessels. In past times, people used them to store perfumes or greasy ointments called unguents. Perhaps in ancient Egypt, they weren't bad in the field of cosmetology. Near the temple, archaeologists discovered a Greek sanctuary. Apparently, the Greeks living in Egypt or coming here on business wanted to pay tribute to Aphrodite, so they created a small building in her honor. In that place, archaeologists found bronze and ceramic artifacts from different cultures. Scientists found out that the Greeks had permission to trade in the Egyptian city and even be its residents. It seems pharaohs living around 600 BCE were favorable to the Greeks. The profession of an archaeologist is very exciting. But what would you do if you found some ancient treasure? Before answering this question, find out what law applies to such finds in your country. For centuries, the whole world was wondering how the giants of Easter Island moved around. Maybe powerful chiefs ordered big groups of workers to haul them. Or the elite controlled special statue-making quarries. But now we finally know the people of Rapa Nui didn't drag their moai statues into place like lifeless logs. They made them walk. Scientists looked at nearly 1,000 moai, checked their shapes, proportions, wear patterns, and the gentle forward lean and curved base that many statues have. And then it struck them. Those details weren't accidents, but engineering. The forward lean shifts the center of gravity, and the curved base lets the statue pivot like a pendulum. Once the motion starts, inertia helps carry each step. Think of it like walking an enormous stone toddler using ropes and balance. To prove this right, the research team built a 4.35-ton replica. The real statues were around 13 tons, and some weighed up to 80 tons. With 18 people on the ropes, they walked the statue about 300 feet, about the length of a football field, in 40 minutes. That's faster and easier than dragging something flat across logs or rollers. The old roads of Rapa Nui also help the process. They're about 14 feet wide, and the way they curve inward makes them perfect to keep a statue steady while it walks forward. Every time the islanders moved a moai, they weren't just walking it, but they were literally shaping the road as part of the job. When you look at the island's landscape today, you can actually see these paths crisscrossing each other, sometimes running side by side like alternate routes. The ancient workers were likely clearing a stretch of ground, moving the statue a bit, clearing a bit more, then rocking it forward again in a specific rhythm. It looks like they spent just as much time prepping the road as they did moving the statue itself. So, the ancient Rapa Nui didn't need thousands of workers or modern machinery, and it all worked with just ingenuity, rhythm, teamwork, and clever design. Their transportation wasn't the only moai mystery. People knew the statues were meant to honor important chiefs, but no one could explain why the ancient islanders picked those exact spots for them. Most of the moai sit right along the coastline, almost like they're guarding the island. So a team of scientists took a closer look at those locations, and the answer turned out to be all about water. Easter Island's volcanic soil is super porous, which means it soaks up rainfall quickly. Because of that, there weren't enough rivers or streams, and the island ended up with very limited fresh water. Hundreds of years ago, the people survived thanks to groundwater discharge. Basically, water stored deep underground in layers of rock or soil called aquifers eventually rises up to the surface on its own. When that water bubbled up near the coast, it mixed with seawater, but the mix stayed fresh enough to drink. The locals collected it right from those coastal spots, and that's exactly where they built the moai. They weren't just decorating the coastline, they were marking the island's most essential source of fresh water. Now, most of the moai bodies were made from volcanic tuff, a soft, easily carved stone. and most of the statues were carved in one quarry inside an ancient volcano. In October 2023, a wildfire tore through the quarry, and everyone who cares about Rapa Nui got really concerned about whether the site would survive future disasters. So when a team of scientists arrived in January the following year, a local community group asked if they could document the quarry, just in case another fire damaged it for good. The geographers jumped at the chance and launched about 30 drone flights over the quarry. Flight after flight, they collected an incredible 22,000 photos. After that, they spent months running those images through computer software that stitched every piece together into a single, hyper-detailed 3D model. Now anyone in the world can explore Ranu Raraku, one of Easter Island's most important quarries, without even setting foot on the island. Of course, the 3D model isn't just an online tour platform. The team noticed that there were several workshops inside the quarry, and carving techniques changed from one site to another. So there wasn't one chief who told them how to do it, but rather each spot worked like its own workshop that was tied to a specific family clan. This could also be another proof that the Moai could move with far fewer people than anyone once believed, probably around 20 to 50. That's roughly the size of an extended family or small lineage group on Easter Island. Most statues were carved while lying on their backs from the top down. In the most common method, the carvers focused on the face first, shaping the eyes, nose, and mouth, and then carved the outline of the head and body around those features. The second method flipped that order. They carved the entire block into the basic shape of a moai first and didn't add any details until later. And in a few rare cases, the carvers went at the stone from the side and worked straight into a nearly vertical cliff, which must have taken some great skill. And just when researchers mapped over 1,000 moai and thought they knew them all, the island threw them a curveball. In the middle of a dried-up lakebed, a place no one expected anything, another statue appeared in 2025. It was the first statue found in a lakebed before, and it might not be the last. For at least 200 or 300 years, the laguna was almost 10 feet deep, so it would be impossible for humans to build or put a statue on the bottom. Scientists think the moai are over 500 years old. It's possible that the Rapa Nui people who built them probably brought the statue here when the lake was dry in the past. The new find turned out to be slightly over 5 feet tall, which is smaller than the other statues on the island. As the region continues to dry out, the lakebed has started revealing what it's been hiding for who knows how long. More statues could be tucked under those thick reeds that grew over the lake for centuries. Now that the water has receded, scientists might be able to use ground-sensing tools to detect what's buried beneath the surface. While researchers keep studying the statues and solving their mysteries, nature is playing against them. A new study shows that by 2080, seasonal waves could push far enough inland to hit some of Easter Island's massive moai statues. These stone giants have stood through everything: harsh sun, relentless wind, pounding rain, lichen slowly creeping across their surfaces, and even wildfires. But rising sea levels already threaten the island's coast, and the moai now face a danger bigger than anything they've endured before. Researchers built a super detailed digital model, a digital twin of a bay on the island's southeast coast. They ran a bunch of simulations to see how different sea level rise scenarios would change the way waves move through the bay. The results of these simulations showed that waves could start reaching the site's 15 moai by 2080. And then of the most recognizable and photographed statues on the island could end up flooded. This spot sits on a big ceremonial platform and draws more visitors than almost any other moai spot on Rapa Nui. And the danger doesn't stop there. Dozens of other important cultural features nearby are also in danger. Ancient dwellings, petroglyphs carved into stone, burial sites, old rock gardens. Basically, the entire physical memory of Rapa Nui's cultural history. If the island doesn't manage these risks, it could even lose its UNESCO World Heritage status. Now that researchers understand the threat more clearly, They want to use this knowledge to help protect the island. Scientists hope to collaborate closely with local communities to safeguard Rapa Nui's cultural heritage for future generations. 500 years before the first stone of Stonehenge was ever raised, someone was already standing in a field watching the sun rise on the longest day of the year. And they had built something specifically to track it. That something just got pulled out of the ground, and it might force us to rewrite everything we thought we knew about how Stonehenge began. Many of us treated Stonehenge like it appeared out of nowhere, as if ancient Britons simply woke up one day and decided to drag enormous stones across the countryside and arrange them into a circle. But what if that's not how the story actually starts? What if Stonehenge wasn't the beginning at all, but the final chapter of something that started 5 centuries earlier? That's exactly what archaeologists now believe, and the evidence is strange enough to make you do a double take. Just over 3 miles from Stonehenge, near a small town called Bulford, a team of researchers uncovered something deceptively simple. 2 suspicious holes in the ground. Not stone circles, not towering monoliths, just 2 pits, spaced about 394 feet apart. Here's where it gets interesting. Those pits once held massive wooden poles, long since rotted away, leaving only their outlines behind. When researchers carefully mapped out exactly where those poles would have stood in relation to the sun, they found something remarkable. The poles aligned perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. If that alignment sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact same solar alignment built into Stonehenge itself, centuries later. Using radiocarbon dating, a technique that measures the decay of carbon in organic material to determine age, scientists were able to figure out that the wooden poles were placed into the ground roughly 5,000 years ago. About 500 years before the iconic stones of Stonehenge were ever put in place. In other words, someone was tracking the movement of the sun with incredible precision, half a millennium before Stonehenge as we know it existed. Researchers involved in the excavation have called it one of the most important discoveries of their careers. And not just because of what was found, but because of how early it dates. Until now, our understanding of ancient solar astronomy in Britain rested almost entirely on Stonehenge and a small handful of similar monuments built around the same era. This new find pushes that timeline back substantially, suggesting the obsession with tracking the sun started earlier than anyone had assumed. And it wasn't just poles sticking out of an empty field. Around the site, archaeologists recovered pottery fragments, animal bones, charcoal, and carefully worked flint tools. All signs that people gathered here regularly, likely for seasonal celebrations tied to the solstices. Among these objects was something particularly unusual: a rare disc-shaped knife. Experts believe it may have been placed there deliberately, perhaps as a symbolic stand-in for the sun itself. Think about that for a moment. 5,000 years ago, people were coming together at this exact spot, specifically to mark the turning of the seasons, using a sun-shaped object as part of what may have been some kind of ritual. That's not just early astronomy, that's early religion, early community, and early ceremony, all wrapped into a site that history had completely forgotten about until now. Using digital reconstructions of the ancient sky, landscape, and horizon, researchers were able to confirm the alignment wasn't accidental or coincidental. According to the team behind the discovery, this find reframes how we should think about Stonehenge entirely. Not as a monument that sprang up in isolation out of nowhere, but as part of a much longer, ongoing relationship between early communities, the land they lived on, and the sky above them. To be fair, not everyone has had the chance to review the full findings yet, since the detailed research hasn't been formally published in a journal. Outside experts have called the discovery intriguing and exciting, while also noting that the complete picture is still emerging and more details are needed. So why does any of this actually matter? Because it suggests Stonehenge wasn't a sudden, isolated achievement that came out of nowhere. It may have been the final version of an idea that ancient people had already been experimenting with for generations. Tracking the sun, marking the solstices, and building structures to mark these passages of time. The stone circle we recognize today might simply be the polished monumental upgrade of something far older, far simpler, and far less famous. And as if one mystery wasn't already enough, scientists have also cracked a completely different secret hiding inside Stonehenge itself. One connected to one of its largest and strangest stones. Inside the circle sits something called the altar stone, a massive slab of greenish sandstone roughly 16 feet long and about 3 feet wide, weighing in at around 6 tons. It's partially buried today beneath 2 other fallen stones. And for decades, geologists assumed they knew exactly where it had come from, a specific region in southeast Wales. That long-standing assumption had just been completely blown apart. A team of scientists analyzed the chemical makeup of tiny mineral grains found inside fragments of the altar stone. By carefully measuring the age of these microscopic minerals, researchers were able to create something like a chemical fingerprint, unique to the rock's true place of origin. Some of the mineral grains turned out to be between 1 and 2 billion years old, while other minerals within the same stone were a comparatively young 450 million years old. That very specific combination simply doesn't match Welsh's bedrock at all. Instead, it matches rock found in the Orcadian Basin, way up in northeast Scotland, roughly 466 miles away from where Stonehenge now stands. Let that sink in for a second. A 6-ton stone, somehow transported nearly 500 miles with no engines, no wheels suited for that kind of cargo, and none of the infrastructure we'd consider absolutely necessary today. And all this happened around 4,600 years ago. So, how on earth did it actually get there? Researchers think the answer may involve sailing. Moving a stone that massive over land across hundreds of miles of rough, uneven, forested terrain would have been an enormous and exhausting undertaking. Arguably far less practical than transporting it by sea, hugging the coastline of Britain the whole way. If that theory holds up, it implies these Neolithic communities had functioning trade networks, real navigation skills, and a level of social organization far more advanced than most people ever assumed existed during this period of prehistory. But there's an even wilder twist to this story. Some researchers now believe humans may not have done all of the heavy lifting themselves, quite literally. Glaciers might have helped. During the last ice age, massive sheets of slowly moving ice could have carried fragments of rock, including, potentially, the very stone that would eventually become the altar stone. Partway through that long journey, long before any human being ever touched it, nature, in other words, may have done a chunk of the transport work for free, with people simply finishing the job thousands of years later. So here's where all of this leaves us. 500 years before Stonehenge's stones were ever raised, people were already gathering nearby, tracking the sun with simple wooden poles, and leaving behind sun-shaped tools as offerings. And the massive stone sitting at the very heart of Stonehenge itself may have traveled from the complete opposite end of Britain, possibly with a little unexpected help from glacial ice, millions of years before anyone built anything at all. Stonehenge has always been treated as a singular, isolated mystery. But the more researchers dig, quite literally, the clearer it becomes that it was never just one single moment frozen in time. It was the result of centuries upon centuries of human curiosity about the sky, the seasons, and the sun, building on ideas and traditions that came long before the stones we instantly recognize today. And somewhere out there, buried beneath fields that look like nothing more than ordinary, unremarkable English countryside, there may be even more clues just waiting to rewrite this entire story all over again.
Most people know that pyramids were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, designed to ensure they had a smooth journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was constructed for the pharaoh Khufu. But what most people don't know is that this whole pyramid building trend started right here with the step pyramid of Djoser about 4,700 years ago. This massive structure was built for Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler from Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It rises 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project, but for ancient Egyptians, the step pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids. Reaching new heights is super exciting, but the real mystery is what is going on below the ground. In this pyramid's underground labyrinth, there is a network of tunnels stretching about 3.5 miles long, and some researchers believe these tunnels might have been part of a sophisticated water system that could completely change what we think about pyramid construction. Let's talk about this massive complex located in Saqqara. Surrounding the pyramid, there's what's known as a dry moat, a continuous trench that is up to 164 feet wide and almost 2 miles long. It forms a sort of rectangular shape around the pyramid. This trench has an average depth of about 65 feet. Now, if you were to add up all the earth and rock they dug out to create this moat, it would be about 10 times the volume of the step pyramid itself. For the longest time, people just assumed this trench was nothing more than a huge quarry, a place where they dug up stone and clay to build the step pyramid. Makes sense, right? But when you take a closer look, it doesn't add up. The trench is too narrow and deep to be practical for mining, and its layout doesn't match anything we know about ancient Egyptian quarrying methods. Plus, some sections of the trench are actually covered with a rocky ceiling, which would have made it nearly impossible to use as a quarry. Another theory suggests that the dry moat had some kind of spiritual significance. Maybe it was a sacred place, where souls of nobles gathered to serve the late king in the afterlife. There are even niches in the walls that work as a hint at this spiritual function. But most researchers believe that this purpose likely developed much later, long after the complex was built for Djoser. So, what was the moat really designed for? In 2020, a researcher came up with a pretty intriguing idea. It is possible that this trench was actually designed to collect and manage water, especially after heavy rainfalls. Now, that makes sense when you consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains. This could also explain why the trench wasn't used for new graves until much later when the climate became drier and less prone to flooding. The story becomes even more intriguing, as this trench appears to be part of a larger, more complex hydraulic system within the Djoser complex. It is like the trench has several compartments, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself. The Djoser complex has a series of underground shafts, and some researchers think that water from the moat's deep trench might have been used to power a hydraulic lift system, and this giant water-powered elevator could have been used to raise the heavy stones needed to build the pyramid. It worked like a volcano, but instead of lava, water did the heavy lifting. Imagine a big deep hole in the ground at the center of the pyramid site. Inside this hole, there was a huge wooden platform, kind of like a giant raft that could move up and down. When the workers wanted to lift a heavy stone, they would fill the hole with water. As the water rose, the wooden platform started to float up, carrying the stone with it, almost like a giant water-powered elevator. When the stone reached the right height, the workers slid it off the platform and onto the pyramid. The idea is that water from the deep trench, after being cleaned and filtered, would flow into these shafts. A massive float, possibly made of wood, would then rise as the water filled the shaft, lifting the stones up to where they were needed for construction. Once the stone was in place, they'd let the water out, lowering the platform back down to the bottom, ready to lift the next stone. This fancy hydraulic lift system could have been a game changer, making the whole building process a lot faster and more efficient without using a lot of workforce. It is like the ancient Egyptians were already embracing the whole idea of work smarter, not harder. But of course, not everyone is on board with this theory. Some experts argue that the area where the step pyramid of Djoser was built couldn't have held enough water from occasional rains to maintain such a fancy hydraulic system. The main theory suggests that, in the past, there might have been some kind of lake nearby that would have filled up after a period of rain, and this lake could have supplied water to the complex's hydraulic system. But there is no mention of such a lake in any ancient Egyptian writings, so it might be more of a what-if situation than a reality. And then there's the issue of the hard work itself. Remember when I said this method could have allowed the ancient builders to raise stones with far less effort? Well, that might not be entirely true. According to some experts, just building this hydraulic device would have required a lot more heavy work than simply moving the stone blocks using good old-fashioned manpower. And let's not forget, the step pyramid of Djoser is like a baby pyramid compared to those that came later. The stones used for Djoser's pyramid weighed, on average, about 660 pounds each, which is nothing compared to the more than 2.5-ton blocks used later for the pyramid of Chephren. If this cool water lift theory gets completely ruled out, we still need to explain how this pyramid was built in the first place. To answer that, we need to rewind a bit and talk about the original plans. See, before Djoser's tomb became a pyramid, the idea was to construct a simple mastaba. This type of tomb was pretty common in earlier periods, a flat-roofed, rectangular structure with sloping sides. But after the original mastaba was finished, they decided to expand it a bit by adding more layers on top. And then they added even more layers, until the construction reached 6 distinctive steps, each one smaller than the previous. And they probably did all this by raising those heavy stones using ramps, not a water-powered elevator. There is still so much we don't know about the step pyramid of Djoser. More research is definitely needed to fully understand how this system worked, or if it even existed at all. But the idea of using water to help build the pyramid adds a whole new layer to our understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering. It's a powerful reminder of just how clever and resourceful those builders were, using the natural landscape and the power of water to create one of the most iconic monuments in history. Consider the Great Pyramids, one of the original 7 wonders of the world and the only one that still exists today. Did you know that the pyramids of Giza weren't the only pyramids out there? And they weren't even the first ones. First, there were the pretty good pyramids, but they didn't catch on. Nah, I made that up. Back to the story. In ancient Egypt, it was believed that kings were chosen by gods to serve on earth as their mediators. In the afterlife, they were expected to become gods themselves. The pyramid complex was built to make sure that the king had everything they might need in the afterlife. The complex included the pyramid, a palace, and temples. The tomb in the pyramid, where the king was buried, was filled with many things they might need, like furniture, food, and gold vessels. Actually, the first pyramid had been built 80 years before the first pyramid of Giza appeared. Overall, there were around 100 of them. Some weren't finished though, since the construction took a while and not every pharaoh lived long enough to see the end of the construction. And now let's talk about the construction itself. The biggest of the pyramids of Giza is as tall as a 40-story building. So how on earth did they manage to build a structure that massive 5,000 years ago, long before machines and other equipment appeared? Well, let's figure it out. So Pharaoh Khufu ascended the throne around 2575 BCE, and his architects started the construction of the oldest and biggest of the pyramids of Giza. He figured that over 2 million limestone blocks had to be used to build the pyramid, each weighing around 2.5 tons, around the weight of a rhino. The architect wanted to finish the construction in 20 years. To make it possible, a stone had to be carried and pushed into place every 4 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year, except leap year. So obviously, a lot of workers were needed to make it happen. Many believe that it was enslaved people who worked at the pyramid's construction site, but that's not true. Workers came from all over Egypt to contribute to the project. All in all, around 25,000 of them. The Egyptians were doing all kinds of work, starting with manual labor and crafting tools to administrative work. They all worked around 10 hours a day. They were housed and well fed, and they were overall living a more comfortable life than an average Egyptian could afford at that time. Supposedly, the builders lived in a nearby temporary city and were a highly organized community with a strong leader. The pyramids seemed to be designed to align with the points on a compass, and their sides symbolized the rays of the sun. But back at that time, there were no compasses. Ancient Egyptians figured out the directions themselves and with amazing precision. To align the pyramids, they used 2 constellations. The construction site was arranged on the west bank of the Nile River. This also had a symbolic meaning. Just like the sun sets in the west, life sets in the west as well. The second pyramid of Giza was for Khufu's son, Pharaoh Khafre. It's a bit smaller, but this one has the famous noseless statue of the Sphinx. Of course, originally it had a nose. I would tell you what happened to it, but it's still a mystery, and no one knows for sure. Sphinxes have the body of a lion and the head of a human. They were considered guardians of important areas. This famous Sphinx, also pronounced Sphinx, has the head of Pharaoh Khafre and is guarding his pyramid, facing the sunrise. The Sphinx is one of the biggest and oldest statues in the world. Originally, it not only had a nose, but was also painted. Scientists have discovered traces of the red color of its face. So, most likely, the Sphinx was painted red. There are also remains of yellow and blue color on its body. The statue definitely wasn't boring. Till around 1800, the Sphinx was buried up to its shoulders until an adventurer with a team of 160 men dug it out. But let's get back to the construction. The workers, of course, needed stone blocks. There were 2 main places where people could get these stones. One source was close to the construction site, but that fossil-lined yellow stone was only suitable for the pyramid's interior. The limestone blocks for the exterior were hauled from 8 miles away on 30-foot-long sleds. Apparently, it wasn't too hard to pull them. The sand mixed with the right amount of water was pretty slick, and 10 people could move a sled even with a rock weighing so much. Surprisingly, cutting off a block of limestone wasn't the biggest problem. When in the ground, it was soft and could be split relatively easy. But after getting exposed to the air, limestone hardens. So the most difficult part was to shape the blocks. That step was crucial because the smallest inaccuracies could lead to the whole pyramid collapsing. So, okay, those limestones were mined, carried on a sled, shaped, and then what? How could they be put into place? Well, this is still a mystery. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of a ramp system that dates back around the time the pyramids were being built. So historians have come to the consensus that, most likely, the Egyptians designed a unique ramp system to move and pull huge stone blocks. The most common opinion is that there were several ramps around the pyramid. There probably was a central ramp with 2 staircases on each side of it built over the pyramid stones. The ramp was growing as the pyramid was getting higher. People might have been walking up the stairs, pulling up stones on wooden sleds. But this is just one of the options. Other experts say that the ramps were around the pyramid, and some say that the ramps were inside the pyramid. Maybe we will never know for sure, and it'll forever remain a mystery. The exterior limestone of the pyramid was polished with sand and stone until it gleamed. On top, there was a gold and silver capstone, which glimmered over Egypt like a second sun. So, that's how it was 5,000 years ago. Now, about the interior. Surprisingly, there's not much inside the pyramid. Most of it is just solid stone with very little open space. But let's take a quick look inside. From the entrance, there are two stairways, one going down and the other going up. They take us to the chambers. There are 3 of them inside. Now, why is that? Apparently, throughout the whole construction, a burial chamber had to be prepared at all times, just in case a pharaoh kicked the bucket before the construction ended. So, separate chambers were built one after another as the construction progressed. The last of them was the main one. It's called the King's Chamber. It's the one where Khufu is resting. It's the biggest room at the very heart of the pyramid, and there's a big passageway leading to it. It was likely used as a kind of elevator to move granite up to build the interior. Granite was also used to make 5 stories of support beams to ensure that the pyramid didn't collapse. And we can see that it worked since it's been standing for centuries. Unfortunately, none of these chambers have hieroglyphs on the walls. If you want to see the writings, you should go to the decorated tombs near the pyramids. Those pieces of art are depiction of ancient Egypt's culture and daily life. The texts allow researchers to study their language and grammar. The treasures that once were in the pyramids have been taken by people. There are also many secret tunnels and passages inside the pyramids, but even today, no one knows the whole plan of the interior. Scientists have been sending little robots with cameras inside for many years, but there's still a lot we don't know about the pyramids. Now they're trying to use an X-ray to scan the pyramids from the outside without going inside. So yeah, ancient Egyptians did create a mystery no one has been able to crack for 5,000 years already. It's nighttime, and you're about to walk inside Pharaoh Tutankhamun's final resting place. You know, King Tut. You don't have a torch, but at least you came with a flashlight. You walk down several flights of stairs and observe how the walls are carved in hieroglyphics and what looks like a spell. Those who take anything from this place will be doomed for life, the spell says. Even if you don't really believe it, this scares you a little bit. You find a huge stone door. Is it a trap? You manage to open it, but oh no, it's only an empty chamber. You check your map. It seems like you're heading in the right direction. After what feels like hours, you realize you must be trapped inside a labyrinth. You try to retrace your steps, but you can't find the door where you came in from anymore. That's it, you think to yourself. You've fallen for the Pharaoh's trap. What's worse, you didn't bring a lunch. Okay, so we've all seen Hollywood movies where the main character is exploring ancient ruins and faces some seriously dangerous traps, right? We've been told Egyptian royalty protected their final resting places with venomous scorpions and snakes, sliding doors that will trap you for life, and giant rolling boulders that will crush anyone on their paths. The thing is, were these traps truly real? Well, I regret to be the one to break it to you, but this is all fiction. These elaborate traps were too technologically advanced for ancient civilizations to pull off. That is not to say, however, that there weren't any traps at all. Ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians and the Mayans, are known for their practice of building entire monuments dedicated to the ones who had passed away. These structures would often reflect the position of person occupied in society. So, for the really important people, the VIPs of their times, massive monuments were built to host their bodies long after they were gone. Some of these civilizations believed that a person's life would continue on the other side of the veil. For that reason, a person would be buried together with the belongings of their current life. If they had a lot of money and power and stuff, that meant their resting places would be filled with riches and gold. Now imagine if you lived in ancient Egypt and you knew exactly where all the pharaohs' tombs were located and had heard rumors of the amount of wealth kept in these places. Maybe you would be tempted to go check it out, right? We're talking about large rooms filled from floor to ceiling with golden artifacts, jewels, and even money. I mean, it does sound tempting. And since there weren't any security guards protecting the entrance of these places, Egyptians needed to get creative as to how they would protect these riches. These old civilizations found some traps to be useful. A recurring one was building empty rooms inside the monument to confuse a burglar. Now, let's take a look at Amenhotep III's final resting place as an example. It was built in the city of Luxor, in a spot also known as the Western Valley of the Kings. Two French engineers originally discovered the monument between 1905 and 1914 CE. The structure is huge and has more than 10 chambers, connected by long corridors and steep stairways. The King's Chamber is the most hidden one, and for an outsider to try and find it, they will probably enter a lot of empty rooms beforehand. Other pharaohs tried to protect their riches by commissioning monuments with false doors concealing pits that were up to 20 feet deep. This way, an unwarned and unwanted visitor would be surprised by the deep hole on their way to the king's resting chamber. Alongside false doors, pharaohs made sure to build labyrinth-style corridors and false walls. This way, robbers could take hours or days before they found the king's real chamber. As to pits with poisonous snakes on them, if there were any reptiles inside these monuments, they probably got inside on their own and would most likely not stay there for long. There is no way snakes would survive years and years without food inside these pits. So yes, another Hollywood-induced belief right there. If these traps seem boring to you, archaeologists did find an interesting deterrent in the final resting place of the Red Queen of Palenque in Mexico. Palenque was one of the most powerful Mayan cities in pre-Columbian Mexico, and the Red Queen was believed to be the grandmother of the last Mayan king, undoubtedly a person of immense importance to the empire. In her honor, a huge monument was built to keep her body after her passing. The discovery of the tomb itself was already thrilling. Archaeologists found an ancient monument when digging at the site back in 1994. The first thing they found was a room with a hidden door. Once they opened the door, they discovered a long corridor. Finally, at the end of this corridor was the Queen's chamber. The team of archaeologists was beyond excited to unearth this chamber with the mummy of the Queen herself still inside it. They found her to be accompanied by her pearls, jade shells, and expensive rocks. But as the team explored the remains, they saw something rather strange. The room was filled with a red-colored powder. Researchers knew that the color red was important to the Mayan people, and that much of their clothing and buildings were decorated with this color. But they didn't understand why the queen was buried with this unknown red substance. After they took a sample back with them for further analysis, they discovered that the red powder was cinnabar, a very dangerous mineral. This powder, when inhaled, can cause, shall we say, severe health damage to a person. The team concluded that this could only be a trap for anyone trying to steal her riches. Okay, so dangerous powders might have worked as the most intense traps we've seen until now. But perhaps the cheapest way to keep out unwanted visitors was to advertise spells written out all over the monument. We'd probably laugh at these today, but back in the day, they were more or less effective. Spells usually said that the person who took anything from that place would meet a tragic fate. Some spells said that robbers would lose their houses in big fires or terrible floods. Other spells said burglars would have incurable and undiagnosed health issues, but they weren't really enough to stop people from taking any gold. There are some stories surrounding how these spells might have been real. One of them is from the famous British Egyptologist Howard Carter, the one responsible for unearthing Pharaoh Tutankhamun's resting place in the 1920s. After months of unsuccessful digging, Carter discovered the tomb's existence by chance. He found the entrance to a stairway right beneath the soil where he had been searching all those months. With the help of a team, he cleared the piles of sand blocking the stairs and discovered a doorway. The door had several royal symbols carved into it, and Carter knew this could only mean a very important person had been buried there. And he was right. With a chisel, he made a hole in the top left-hand corner of the doorway and lit his vision with the help of a candle. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, the reflection of several golden and jeweled items crowding the chamber before him. Lost for 3,000 years, Carter had just discovered the final resting place of King Tut. But the story didn't finish here. This discovery was accompanied by a series of unfortunate events that led people to believe it had something to do with the pharaoh's spell. Carter himself mysteriously passed away just a few years later, and some of his assistants lost their houses in floods, just like one of the spells threatened. Some say it's just coincidental, as there's no real proof of these things being connected. Well, what do you think? Was this an effective trap after all?
Imagine working 7 days a week on a large-scale construction site. You, along with thousands of others, carry millions of stone blocks and put them on top of each other according to a complex system. You work without modern construction equipment. You have no air conditioning or constant access to water. It's so hot outside that you can fry eggs on the road. You've been building the pyramid for decades, and now, when it's finally done, you enjoy the result of the colossal work of thousands of people. You're looking at a giant cultural monument of global value that will freeze in time and amaze people for tens of thousands of years. A few thousand years have passed. People in the 21st century see the pyramids and are like, wow, I can't believe humans have built this. Yeah, the people who built the pyramids wouldn't have appreciated such a theory. But actually, there are reasons to believe that people built it using some fantastic technology. From the outside, it seems the Great Pyramids are just big triangles of stone. People just put some heavy blocks on top of each other, and that's it. In fact, the design seems too perfect to be true. The pyramid consists of more than 2 million blocks. They lay so close to each other and are so even that you couldn't squeeze even a thin sheet of paper between them. Scientists still can't figure out the exact technology for building the Egyptian pyramids. One of the biggest and most famous is the Great Pyramid of Giza. This huge construction, well known all over the world, has one big secret. There should be a capstone on top of the pyramid. It's a triangular-shaped stone block, a small pyramid on top of a huge one. It's also called a pyramidion. The builders of ancient Egypt made it out of granite and limestone and covered it with gold. No records or old drawings prove that there was a pyramidion at the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But there's another ancient Egyptian structure with such a triangle, the Red Pyramid. It was built before the Great One, and its capstone has survived to this day. Archaeologists have found and reconstructed it. But where could the capstone of the Great Pyramid be? It's a mystery that still has no answer. Some are sure that some thieves have stolen it from the top. Maybe they just climbed up and pushed the pyramidion down. It makes perfect sense. The capstone was probably the most valuable element of the pyramid. Many scientists and archaeologists still don't know its exact purpose. Some believe that this peak covered with gold glorified the pharaohs. The capstone reflected moonlight at night and illuminated the entire space around it. During the day, the capstone reflected sunlight with its shiny surface. You could have noticed it from afar. The top of the pyramid was a kind of guiding star for lost travelers. All other stone blocks of the pyramid consist of limestone. People polished them to make them look shiny. In the past, they were even glowing and reflected light. You could see glowing pyramids from space, although they looked like tiny lights. Over thousands of years, winds, sandstorms, and rains have changed the pyramid's appearance. If people had taken care of them all this time, they would have looked like something out of science fiction movies, or the pyramids from Las Vegas. But unfortunately, we will never see their original appearance. Some archaeologists and scientists believe that the capstone could absorb the sun's energy and distribute it evenly throughout the pyramid. No one knows precisely why the Egyptians needed this technology. There's a theory the pyramids are ancient energy systems. The pharaohs applied this energy to use some unique technologies that were more advanced than all the achievements of the 21st century. And the triangular shape of the pyramids was ideal for boosting this electromagnetic energy. In theory, solar radiation, or electromagnetic forces, accumulated at the top of the pyramid, filled the inner rooms, and then went down the walls to the base. Any surface distortion could prevent the flow from spreading, so they had to create a perfectly smooth surface. That's why they installed the blocks so that nobody could squeeze a needle or razor blade between them. Many people believe in this theory because they built the pyramids from limestone. This material can hold energy inside itself. In the inner part, they created granite deposits to cause air ionization, that is, to create an electric charge. They also dug channels under the pyramid for water to transmit electricity. And at the top, they put a gold capstone, the best conductor of electricity. So, this is how you get a great power generator. Different cultures used similar technologies to create electricity all over the world. But these are all theories. If it had been working, humanity would have used these technologies today. There are mentions of the metal industry, chemistry, engineering, physics, mathematics, and astronomy in some ancient records. Most scientists don't believe in all these things. We know the detailed stages of the technology's development in different cultures. In the 21st century, scientists, historians, and anthropologists can track the evolution of all modern devices. If people had created some technological inventions in ancient times, the history of the world would have looked different. Perhaps all the achievements of antiquity could have been wiped off the face of the earth by global cataclysms. And it can happen to us. Just imagine how people would dig up a laptop in 5,000 years. Perhaps they wouldn't understand what kind of device it is. Another Egyptian wonder surrounded by mystery is the statue of the Sphinx. The Egyptians carved it out of a single massive piece of limestone about 4.5 thousand years ago. But scientists still don't know the exact date of its construction or who built it. People painted the Sphinx in different colors, so it looked much brighter and more vivid in the distant past. It was shining just like the Great Pyramids. Anyway, time hasn't only changed its appearance, but its name too. Initially, the Egyptians called it Hor-Mekhet. The Greeks renamed it the Sphinx about a few hundred years after it had been built. The Sphinx emphasized the greatness of the rulers of Egypt. It also performed a symbolic function of a watchdog guarding the tomb of the pharaoh and the paths leading to it. This version sounds realistic, since archaeologists have discovered many secret entrances at the foot of the Sphinx. Perhaps these rooms and intricate tunnels lead to underground halls with treasures. And treasures don't always mean gold and jewelry. According to legends and theories, the Sphinx guards the Hall of Records, the storage of all humankind's knowledge. The information about the ancient mythical state of Atlantis could be there. You can find many detailed maps of the internal dungeons of the Sphinx on the internet. They show structures 12 stories deep under the statue. It looks like a small city filled with gold, scrolls of knowledge, and various ancient artifacts. But don't believe all these maps. These are just theories. Several thousand years have passed, but people have very little information about it. Archaeologists know that there are still many strange and exciting things about the Sphinx that are still undiscovered. Some locals are afraid to research because they believe they can awaken something terrible from the underground depths. Therefore, it's mostly scientists from other countries who conduct the excavations. In 1998, scientists discovered strange tunnels leading to empty rooms under the Sphinx. They realized that some people tried to get there through tunnels in the past, and maybe those people took all the treasures that were there. One of the legends says that some powerful artifact lays beneath the Sphinx. Its technology can change the whole world, but the locals are hiding it because it can damage the planet. Some believe that you can find evidence of unknown technologies painted on the granite walls in the pharaoh's tombs. But most likely, these paintings and signs tell us the myths and legends of ancient Egypt. But what if Egyptian symbols and drawings are detailed instructions for using ancient technologies? What if the locals that lived at that time thought, people in the future won't be able to get energy themselves. Let's leave some detailed instructions for them. Anyway, there are many riddles and theories. In reality, the search for answers is a dangerous undertaking, since it's not easy to get into the underground halls. Excavations can ruin the structure of the entire Sphinx. Any person inside the tunnels may get lost and never be able to find their way back. Besides, it costs a lot of money. Now, what would be awesome is if people could invent some device that could scan underground areas and show their detailed models.
It's 1898, and you're taking part in excavations in Saqqara. This place, not far away from Cairo, is full of ancient tombs and pyramids. You're in your Indiana Jones mood and hope to find something really phenomenal to become famous. Gold, manuscripts, treasure maps, mummies of famous pharaohs. Wait, a wooden bird? You're really disappointed as it looks like a regular toy. An old one, but still. Little do you know that years later, someone would propose that your bird was actually an ancient monoplane. So the artifact, nicknamed the Saqqara bird, is made of a sycamore tree. The birdie has a wingspan of just 7 inches and weighs around 40 grams. A perfect original souvenir from Egypt, I would say. It's over 2,000 years old and looks pretty plain, without any carvings of feathers or other intricate ornaments. It has a beak and eyes, though, which makes our find look like a hawk, the emblem of the deity Horus. Its tail is rather unusual as it's squared, looks weirdly upright, and it seems like the sunken part of it was the place for a now missing piece. Humans love solving a good mystery, so there have been several attempts to explain the use of the birdie. First, quite simply, is that it was a ceremonial object. The second idea is that it was a toy for a child from some well-off family. It could have been some sort of boomerang, which was a popular concept in ancient Egypt. Then there was a theory that the bird had been used as a weather vane. But this one has been debunked as the figure doesn't have any holes or markings, except for the one made at the museum in Cairo to fix the exhibit on a stick. So there was no way to hang it in the past. Almost a century after the bird was found, Egyptologist Dr. Khalil Masiha proposed a new theory that it could have been a model of a monoplane. He believed the bird was missing a horizontal tailplane. Otherwise, it had its wings set at a right angle, similar to that of modern planes. It could have worked to generate the aerodynamic lift necessary for flights. Dr. Masiha also claimed that it was common at that time to place miniature models of technological inventions in tombs. So, did the ancient Egyptians really invent the plane in 200 BCE? That would make the Wright brothers, who are considered the inventors of aviation, really upset. They made one of their first flights only in 1903. There's just one way to know for sure, and that is to test the model. But you know, the ancient museum in Cairo would unlikely let one of their cherished exhibits fly around like a toy. That's why glider designer Martin Gregory built a similar model, this time of balsa wood, and concluded that even with the missing tailplane, the plane wasn't much of a flyer. Case solved? Not really. This didn't sound convincing enough to the History Channel, so they invited an aerodynamics expert to build another replica of the bird. He tested it in weather conditions similar to those in Egypt and was impressed with the little plane's abilities. So, if they did invent the prototype of a plane back in the times of pharaohs, it would be a good example of an oop art. That's an out-of-place artifact, an object that's way ahead of its time in terms of technology or history. And the Saqqara bird isn't the only example of such a revolutionary concept. In 1901, a group of divers retrieved the Antikythera mechanism from an underwater shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. It's been dubbed the world's first analog computer, and it's currently dated around 100 BCE. The bronze mechanism could tell the position of the sun, moon, planets, and stars, as well as the lunar phase, the dates of upcoming solar eclipses, and even the speed at which the moon moves through the sky. No one's sure who used it and how or where it was made. But it's obvious that it's extremely precise and way too advanced for its time. The first flushing toilets in the world were invented in the middle of the 20th century. Just kidding. The ancient Minoans on the Mediterranean island of Crete and the Indus Valley civilization both came up with this brilliant invention at the same time, around 4,000 years ago. The plumbing and sanitation were so well done that no one managed to design anything better until 2,000 years later. One ancient Minoan lavatory was discovered at the Palace of Knossos. It looks like it had a wooden seat set over a tunnel that directed water from a rooftop reservoir to an underground sewer. Other varieties got water from jugs. Only the super rich people could afford all this glory. So if you wanted to shop for real estate back then, the flushing toilet would be a telltale sign you were in the rich neighborhood. Automated doors became a cool, seemingly new invention back in 1931. But the technology behind them is actually much older. Think the 1st century CE old. Mathematician and engineer Heron of Alexandria came up with a hydraulic system to open and close temple doors. To bring it into action, you need to light a fire to produce heat. There was a brass pot under the fire, half filled with water. The inventor connected the brass pot to containers that acted as weights. When the fire was burning, the water moved into the containers. They went down and pulled the ropes. It was nothing like a supermarket door that opens in front of you before you even have time to think. Heron's door took hours to open, and there was no way to stop the process. That's why they only opened the doors once a day before people entered the temple, to add some mysticism at the temple during ceremonies. Spooky. Looks like the first ever battery was invented in Baghdad around 2,000 years ago. A German archaeologist found this oval-shaped clay jar in 1938. Scientists are still not sure what purpose it served and who exactly invented it. There is a theory that it was used for electroplating objects with precious metals. When they filled it with a weak acid like vinegar, the battery produced around 1 volt of electricity. Another theory says it was a vessel for sacred scrolls. Would you like to buy contact lenses designed by Leonardo da Vinci himself? In 1508, he invented a glass lens with a funnel on one side. You were supposed to wear it with water inside to improve your vision. Sounds a bit uncomfortable, doesn't it? So, around a century later, French scientist René Descartes decided to improve the idea and make the cornea contact the future lenses. Contacts because they contact your eyes, get it? The glass tube with liquid did help improve vision, but blinking was sadly impossible. 2.5 centuries later, new technologies in the glass industry let scientists design contacts that would fit in the eye and even let the wearer blink. Thanks, guys! Still, those lenses were made of heavy blown glass and didn't let the eye breathe. About 50 years later, contacts became plastic, lightweight, unbreakable, and scratch-resistant, but still covering the entire eye. And then, in 1948, an English optical technician accidentally sanded down a plastic lens and figured out they'd still be in place even if they covered only the cornea. Imagine you're living in 19th century London and need to send a message to New York. It would have taken about 10 days to get there by ship. So when delivery time went from days to hours in 1858, it was a true sensation. The first message was sent by Queen Victoria herself. It was all made possible thanks to the transatlantic telegraph cable, running under the ocean. Sadly, the new cool invention only lasted a few weeks. It took years to bring it back to life.
More than 2,000 years ago, in a town on the coast of Egypt, someone passed away. And before the grave was sealed, a person who loved them did something strange. They took a thin sheet of gold, shaped it like a tongue, and laid it inside the late person's mouth. Archaeologists just opened that grave, and dozens more like it. The gold is still there. Why anyone would do this is one of the strangest and most tender beliefs in the ancient world, and we'll get to it. Because this is only half the story. Around the same time this discovery was announced, Egypt revealed a second one, an entire lost city, buried under the desert on the other side of the country. Two finds, two different worlds, and together they show something you almost never get to see. Let's start with the gold. The place is a seaside town on Egypt's Mediterranean coast, about 60 miles west of Alexandria. It was once a busy port, rich from trade across the sea, and nobody even knew it was there. It was found by accident in 1986 when construction workers were digging. There, archaeologists opened 18 tombs. 11 were cut down into solid rock about 26 feet deep. 7 more were built on the surface out of limestone. And some of the burial rooms were still sealed shut behind heavy stone slabs, closed for over 2,000 years, with everything inside exactly where someone left it. In one, they found a stone coffin about 8 feet long, and with its original lid still on top. And then there are 3 objects that, together, tell you almost everything about how these people thought about the great beyond. The first is a stone altar, carved to look like a door, but it's a fake door. It doesn't open, and it doesn't go anywhere. Ancient Egyptians believed a door like this was a passage the living couldn't use, but the dead could. A way out, built into stone. The third is the smallest. Little glass bottles placed beside the bodies. Tear bottles. There are a few theories about what they were for, and I'll give you 2. One idea is that they caught the tears of mourners to keep beside the person they'd lost. The more likely one is plainer. They simply held oil or other liquids. Either way, they went into the grave. And the second, the reason you're here, is the gold. To understand it, you have to picture what these people believed passing actually was. They didn't see it as an ending. It was rather a journey. They believed that after you passed, you didn't just disappear. You had to travel to the underworld and stand before the gods, who would judge whether you deserved the afterlife. And to be judged, you had to speak. You had to answer for your life out loud in your own defense. But here's the problem. You're not alive. Your body is failing. Your tongue, like everything else, will rot away in the ground. So how does such a person speak? That's what the gold was for. Gold, the Egyptians believed, was the flesh of the gods, the one material on earth that never decays, never tarnishes, never rots. It is, in a sense, immortal. So they gave the dead a tongue made of it, a voice that would last as long as the gods themselves. Think about what that actually means as an act. Someone stood over the body of a person they loved, knowing the body would decay, and gave them the one thing that wouldn't. Not to show off, not for anyone living to see, because the grave was about to be sealed forever. They did it so that someone they cared about would still be able to speak and be judged fairly in a courtroom none of the living would ever enter. Around 24 of these golden tongues came out of the ground here. One of them even carries an eye of Horus, an old Egyptian symbol of protection. a last piece of armor for a soul about to go on trial. Now here's why the second discovery matters. Because just around the same time, hundreds of miles away, archaeologists announced they'd found a whole city under the desert sand. And it tells the opposite half of the same story. This one sits in an oasis, a patch of green land with water in the middle of a huge dry desert. It's far from the Nile River, where almost all famous Egyptian history happened. Basically, the middle of nowhere. But people lived there about 1,600 to 1,700 years ago. And that's a strange moment in Egyptian history. By then, the pharaohs were long gone. Cleopatra had been dead for 400 years. Egypt wasn't running itself anymore. It was part of the Roman Empire, and the people there were slowly adapting to a whole new way of life. And unlike most old towns, which grew messily, one house, then another, streets bending around whatever was already built, like a plate of spaghetti, this city was planned. Wide roads running one way, smaller streets crossing the other, opening into public squares. A neat grid, like a modern city. Somebody sat down before anything was built and decided where it would all go. In the middle stood a church, built about 1,650 years ago, looking down the main street. At the edges stood 2 watchtowers and a fort with thick walls. Inside the mud brick houses were bread ovens, kitchens, and stones for grinding grain, along with jars, lamps, and little bottles for oil and perfume. Someone baked bread here. Someone cooked dinner here. Every night, for years. 2 houses stood out because we know who lived in them. One belonged to a man named Tisos, who worked at the church. The other belonged to a man named Tabibos, and his house is older than the church itself. Archaeologists think that before the town had a real basilica, people gathered to pray at Tabibos' living room. All over the city, they also found almost 200 written notes, not on paper, which was expensive, but scratched onto broken pottery. Cheap, everywhere, free. The sticky notes of the ancient world. And that's exactly why they're priceless. Nobody writes a shopping receipt hoping people will read it in 1,600 years. They record sales, purchases, deals, and personal letters. Who paid who? What person needed to tell another? A grand monument tells you what a king wanted you to think. A receipt tells you what really happened on a random Tuesday. So look at what these 2 places show you, side by side. By the sea, people were still burying their dead the old Egyptian way, gold tongues, false doors, clinging to beliefs thousands of years old. Out in the desert, a brand new religion was taking root in a brand new kind of city, one living room at a time. The old world and the new one, caught in the same country at the same moment, refusing to fully let go of each other. That's what makes this so rare. It isn't a snapshot of ancient Egypt. And it isn't a snapshot of the Egypt that came after. It's the messy in-between, a whole civilization mid-change. And what it hands back to us isn't treasure. It's a receipt, a bread oven, a church that used to be a living room, and a thin piece of gold laid on someone's tongue by a person who couldn't bear for them to go silent. An emperor could bend a story to make himself look grander than he was, but that gold wasn't made to impress anyone. Nobody living was ever supposed to see it. It was an act of love, sealed in the dark. And it's still there, shaped like a void.